Hello, people of internet. It's now time for everybody to gather around the computer screen and welcome in episode 100 of Hey, did you see this one? Oh, hello and welcome to the episode 100.
100 episodes, you say?
100 of them. We did many hundreds of them.
That's a lot of episodes.
We did it. Well, see you next week.
Bye.
Excuse me.
Welcome to episode 100. I planned a little bit more fanfare for this episode. We Kaylin, former co-host of the show, had actually made a sort of a visual collage of our early episodes. I had planned to do a little bit more, but with him leaving the show, it kind of left us in the lurch, and we just sort of had to press on. So maybe at episode 150, we'll do something a bit bigger. But 100 episodes is a pretty crazy milestone. I think when I was doing that Blossom Buddies thing, I think we did more, but it was like very short episodes, episodic. We would film a whole bunch at once and then just release them. But these episodes are all like 2+ hours. This is like hundreds of hours.
As it should be.
As it should. Hey, wait. You made me say that I disagree with you. But this is... We've now created hundreds of hours of content for the people. Thank you for everybody who has guested, watched, supported us. I feel like we're entering a new chapter. I'm going to be changing over our artwork soon. This is great, as you can see, but I think it's time for us to up our game a bit. So next week, I'm going to unveil some new artwork that I've gotten commissioned. Also, I'm going to consider this to be the season finale, and episode 101 will be season 2.
It's a long season. Yeah, that's like some anime level long seasons.
We're basically Naruto and Bleach combined. But it is Musical Mayhem Mania. Musical Mania Mayhem month. We love alliteration here, folks. And we're covering The Who's Tommy, the movie from 1975. Cassandra is back. She is the musical genius. In more ways than one. Is that
me? It's me. Sorry. Oh, wait, I heard dogs and I was like, I know you're talking about me, but then got distracted. Yay!
There you go. I waited to make it as awkward as possible.
Perfect.
But
right on brand.
Thank you for coming back again. You, of course, were on for Ghost in the Shell, and then 2 weeks ago you were on for Repo. For Repo, you filled us in on your background, musical theater, and you talked us through your love of Repo. And then when we were trying to figure out what we should do this week, me and Steve had thrown around the idea of This or The Wall. And I covered The Wall in like high school English at length, and I was like, I don't think I can analyze that thing anymore, and I think it's been done to death. But then I remembered that Tommy, you don't hear a lot of people talk about that, so me and Steve kind of agreed. I voluntold him we were doing it, and
I was kind of anti-wall from the beginning anyway, so
that's true. So we landed on this.
I said, tear the wall down, Mr. Gorbachev.
And then I mentioned it. We were just talking casually to Cass about it, and she was like, I know everything about that too. So I was like, well, you're coming back. You're a fixture on the show now, so thank you for coming back. And as we do each and every week at the top of the show, and I'm 100% ready at all times. I've had this queued up this whole time. I've been 100% ready. Where the fuck did I even put it? I mean,
I know what's really going on. Queued up.
I know exactly where I put it. Is it this one?
A brief history.
That's so ridiculous.
I love it.
So Every week we like to go around and talk about our history with the movie. I'm gonna go last because mine's kind of long. So, Cass, why don't you hit us first with your history of the movie Tommy from 1975?
So I watched this movie one time late at night, I believe after rehearsals. So I was very tired, and I was like 14, and I was in Tommy at the time, and they were like, "Oh, if we're all doing the show, we should watch the movie." A lot of it went over my head. I remember the music being really cool and a lot to look at, but it's also, again, it's different in many ways from the stage version that I was like, oh, okay, cool. I get the vibe. And now let's go do like a more realistic version on stage. But yeah, I don't know. It's such a cool piece that's constantly evolving, constantly being changed, rewritten. Yeah, it's a really cool piece of art. So that's actually a pretty brief history for me. So there you go.
That's fantastic. Because you were in it when you were what, like you were like 20?
14, I think.
Oh, even younger.
Yeah, 14.
For
15.
like, was it for junior high or was it for?
It was part of a theater company, like like more younger people theater.
That's cool.
Which was a crazy suggestion to do Tommy. I don't know who came up with that. The show is insane and like very mature, but they were like, yeah, kids can handle it. Throw it at them. A lot of the roles were played by like the graduating kids of high school, and then they got me and another person who's younger than me to play young Tommy, and then me, I was like teenage, go through all the trauma Tommy. And then, yeah, the older cast. So it was pretty cool.
You were Bahama Tommy.
I was Bahama Tommy.
I'm gonna say big trauma on little Tommy.
That's me.
Fantastic. I'm sure you'll see that's part of why you're perfect for this discussion, because you have this extra layer from like literally like you've seen the movie, you've seen the stage play, but you've had the stage play happening around you because you had to play a deaf, dumb, and blind boy.
Yep.
So that's really exciting to hear you go into that a bit. Steve,
Me.
Tell me about your extensive history of the movie.
Well, as it turns out, I have seen this movie at some point in the past because there are very strong visual moments in this movie that are in my brain that I thought that I just dreamt them. They're so sort of like acidy, burnout, crazy, psychedelic visuals that I was like, those aren't real things. I created those in my dream realms. But no, I've seen this at some point. The one thing that immediately when I saw it, I was like, oh, I have seen this, was Elton John and his giant legs. And I was like, I've seen Elton John with these giant legs before, and I remember this. I think this movie was on quite a bit on television, on like Much Music late at night and Showcase late at night when I was a teen, like maybe middle school. So I think I must have stopped and watched a little bit of it at least. But I remember it kind of freaked me out a little bit, so I probably didn't watch the whole thing. And then yesterday, for the first time from beginning to end, I would say, we watched it here at my place again, and we had a nice little Tommy party, and it was fun. And we all laughed and screamed at the TV, and I did a Jack Nicholson impression for like 20 minutes at one point.
It's pretty good, though.
And then we watched most of Hook.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Great. I think it was one of those movies that was on Showcase all the time because it is so weird and trippy and arty. For me, it's interesting because I have this like, remember how when we were talking about Return to Oz, I had this like memory in my head that like wasn't real, that I just kind of made up. Turns out I thought that the soundtrack to Tommy was actually the soundtrack that wasn't a soundtrack at all. It was just the best of the Who that I had on cassette when I was like in middle school. I'd sit and I'd puff of the herb and play video games and listen to this thing on cassette over and over and over. And I was like, wow, the soundtrack to Tommy is great. And the only connection I had was that my dad loves Tommy. I'll get to that in a sec. A little funny thing about that. he told me that Tommy is a great movie, but it was super weird, and that it was The Who. So my only connection was that I had this Who record, and it has Pinball Wizard in it, so therefore the thing I was listening to must be the soundtrack. Little did I know, and what I would come to find out literally yesterday, was that Pinball Wizard is just the kind of the single off the album, the concept album Tommy, which is a rock opera by Pete Townsend. So I had one of those like epiphany moments. Mostly just felt like an idiot, but it's fine. I'm over it now. I've gotten over it in the last 24 hours. Maybe I haven't. It's very traumatic realizing that. Because Cass, to you, I was like, yeah, I used to listen to it all the time as a kid. I used to listen to it all the time. I used to listen to it on repeat when I was in high school. And you were like, cool. And I was like...
Turns out you're a liar.
It turns out I'm a huge
and
liar.
Now I know.
Yeah.
Filthy, filthy liar.
So last night when I was in the Uber on the way home, I messaged my dad and I was like, I finally actually watched Tommy. And I remember now, he reminded me last night, but his mom, my grandmother, actually took him to see the movie in 1975.
Whoa.
My dad is only 61. He would have been like 13 or 14. And he was like, it was very awkward. And then he said, my dad's kind of a funny guy. He said to me, he said, Grandma took me to it because I was underage. Awkward. Because she was like a cool mom. And I was like, ha ha ha, it's so messed up. And then he said, yes, fiddle about. So then he passed on that trauma right directly to me.
Like wholesale. A hot potato.
Yeah.
Pass it on.
So that was great. But yeah, it's a great movie, and I'm glad that we're here today to talk about it. So,
the movie Tommy.
Thomas.
The Who's Thomas.
Thomason.
A movie about a child who gets horrifyingly traumatized to the point that he can't speak or see or hear anything. And he spends his entire life trying to overcome and confront that trauma, only to then pass that trauma on, much like Jason's father did to him by showing him this movie, to a younger generation.
Yeah. Which brings us to...
Ho, 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 ho! Everybody back up, because here comes the body of the episode.
Beautiful. I don't know why, but for a second when that started playing, I was like, why is Steven Santa Claus?
Oh my god. Yeah. It's I love these. They're all very funny. Did you happen to get the MPAA rating?
No, but I can flip that up while we talk.
Cool. Because the MPAA rating is also great, and I am keeping that. I'm keeping it in the show. In the body of the episode each and every week, we basically just talk about the movie. Previously, we would run down the plot, but we decided that's a little bit too rigid. So now we're just going to jump from idea to idea. And I'm hoping that, Cass, with your infinite knowledge of this particular musical, you're going to give us some comparison contrasts to the movie, to the different versions of the stage play, and I believe, Steve, you have some insight on that as well, and I'm going to give my opinions.
Perfect. We got this.
So I just going down my notes here. We get this great shot to open it up and really sets the tone. It's like a man standing in front of a setting sun, and it almost looks like it's a painting. And
it's like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
It's stunning.
I believe, Steve, you stood up and walked over to the TV like, whoa!
Crawled inside of it. Yeah, became Tommy.
I started kissing it.
Yeah, this thing's so beautiful. TV screen.
And it pretty much launches us into the kind of the background of like Tommy's parents. His dad was a fighter pilot in World War II. When I was listening to the soundtrack, The song is about 1921. I
Yep.
seem to remember in the movie it was not 1921.
Nope. This
What?
is our actual first difference between the album, the stage, and the movie.
Okay,
So
so it's 1941, I believe that they say in the movie, or 1951.
1951. So it was changed for the movie to be the setting of like post World War II.
Right.
1921 was on the album version that was supposed to be post World War One. And in the stage version, it is just called 21. And it's because Mrs. Walker, or Nora, has just turned 21 and she's planning on getting married. And it's like a whole exciting thing. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Because when I was also on the way home last night, I was like, I'm gonna listen to the record, and it was the actual like Tommy the record, and when that happened, I was like, they do mention a year,
But not that one.
but not that one. And also, I was like, I'm pretty sure the World War II happened in the 40s. So if 1921 is going to be a good year, I was very confused. And that's when I was kind of talking to all of you at that time, and we were all kind of, or I think I talked to you like today. We all kind of realized how different. Well, you know already how different it is, but that's when I realized how different even that was. But in this like section, it goes from like it's very realistic shots of him at war, but then like when he leaves to go to war, the mom like crawls into like this cage that's
Yeah.
over her bed, you know? So you get this sense immediately that you're watching something that's kind of grounded in reality, but also there's going to be a lot of weirdness, you know, a lot of
Yeah, there's going to be visual analogy and metaphor, as well as, odd allegory, things like that.
Mm.
Like she's putting herself literally in a cage, as
Literally in a
one does
cage.
when they go to bed.
Yeah, it's safe.
I mean, I just told you guys before the show that I like to have what I call my avalanche sleep. It's very similar.
But a lot more comfy, it sounds. Pillows and blankets are a little different than like almost like a
Metal
barbed
bars, yeah.
wire cage. Good night, me. Close.
Yeah. Can somebody help me close my cage? It's hard to close it from the inside.
Oh wait, my husband is at war and died? Question mark.
I guess slightly before that, though, we do get the thing with where they're going through the rubble, and he passes like behind a wall, and then he's in his war gear, and then they kind of come towards the camera in a sort of feels weird when they do that, but right behind them are a bunch of like, I guess, women in their skivvies, but they have these like stylized gas masks on.
Yeah.
And that's there were a lot of visual cues right from the beginning that it's like, this is an acid trip kind of a movie. I can only imagine it was like, a lot of the stuff in it was made to freak out the squares, as it were. It's a very like hippie movie from the 70s. But like when does the original stage play like arrive on the scene? Because obviously
Basically, it sounds crazy that the same time.
about the same time.
It's the same time. So the whole, at least the way that we did it, and I know our team very much based it off of, the Broadway production and choices, because obviously a bunch of younger people just trying to make art and do some cool things. They basically play the entire overture with, band either in the orchestra or on stage. And all of those scenes are acted out. So you have like kind of an introduction of like Mrs. Walker coming up on stage, Mr. Walker coming up on stage. They like kind of share moments together. He's getting ready for war. He like climbs into like some kind of plane situation. Like it's all done just with the music backing it exactly the same way. And lights and craziness.
Because that was the first striking thing about listening to the album too. It's like you get the first track is the overture, and you do get all the musical themes from the show. Heavy emphasis on the pinball wizard part, because I posit that like I was saying this to you guys, is when they were probably selling the movie and making trailers and promoting it in theaters and stuff, they were like, Elton John does this song, this Who song, Pinball Wizard, that was probably very popular already. And unless I might be mistaken here, I'm not 100% sure. I know the Who have been around for have been around since like the 60s.
1964, I think, is when they were created,
Right.
Founded.
So
yeah, 1964.
I can't remember. I mean, it's probably a quick Google search, but like, was Pinball Wizard on another album first, or is it just on Tommy?
It's on Tommy. It was actually the last song that they wrote for Tommy, that Peter Townsend wrote for Tommy itself. But nope, it was just that album.
Because compared to the other songs on Tommy, it feels the most like a pop rock song.
Yeah. There's also like a breath of fresh air too. Like the whole soundtrack it's beautiful and stunning and has a lot of really intricate moments within itself, but it's dark and it's heavy, and like maybe the more lighter sides of it are kind of like almost like spiritual, religious, chanty kind of vibes, like with See Me, Feel Me. But yeah, other than like Acid Queen is dark, but at least it's like a bop. But Pinball Wizard was kind of like the last thing that they were like, okay, we need some good. We're just gonna, this is the last one, and we'll bring in some joy halfway through this terrifying story.
Because it kind of has this section where things get really good for our main protagonist, and then things get kind of weird, and then things get really kind of, he becomes everything he hated originally, right? So this is that turning point in the movie, and it was a breath of fresh air, because this whole movie has so many trigger warnings and traumatic moments that are like sung to you. So it's like a spoonful of sugar, makes the sour go down, or whatever, for Mary Poppins. What is it? Yeah.
Spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Right.
Yeah.
I almost said poison. So
take your medicine.
And it should be noted. It should be noted too that like this movie does a unique thing where last time we talked about Repo, they would kind of break the songs and kind of just sing to each other. When people are actually talking to each other in this, they're muted, completely muted. You have to like read lips, which is a fun game we were kind of playing while.
What did you say?
Yeah.
But it does. The songs are very...
It's sort of like a silent movie almost, right? Where, except, most silent movies will have cue cards come up in between to show what the person is saying, like subtitles almost, but between shots. I think
that's the other thing too, with like the difference, especially between something like this and Repo, is that Repo is much more constructed as an opera with rock music, with grunge music. Like it is telling you the story with characters, also telling you the story, everybody's involved. But because this is it's a concept album at its base, it is just music. And so it's kind of like having to fit all of the story aspects and kind of make it make sense in a visual setting, which is not easy. And also apparently the original album didn't really have a whole lot of structure to it. Like it kind of like starts almost halfway through the story musically. So for the film, also to note too, the film was done before the stage play. So I have to correct myself from the other night. I didn't remember.
Wow.
They did the movie first. And so they basically had to sit down and kind of create the plot of like the, Mr. Walker going to war and like what their relationship was like and all of these different things. So that by the time, the music was added back in, you were like, oh, okay, I can follow this now. I get it. It makes sense.
That's super weird, because like you don't hear about them turning a movie into a stage play unless it's like this.
It's not often. Well, I mean, School of Rock.
Yeah, or Spam-A-Lot, I guess.
Yeah.
Isn't a one-to-one of Holy Grail, but it is basically Holy Grail in musical form. I saw Spam-A-Lot, sorry to tangent, but I saw Spam-A-Lot, and I don't think I was enough of a Monty Python fan to really enjoy it, but the nerds around me who were there for the Monty Python were eating it up. They were loving all of it. Like, I think I messed up by not being a huge fan.
I don't think that's true. I feel like it's like similar for me. I'm not a sports person, but I go to see a Jays game and I'm like, yay, sports. You all love this. Mm-hmm. I'm having a great time. I kind of understand what's going on.
That's a good point.
I'm still happy I'm here.
Yeah, they got to hit the old pigskin with the wiffle booty or whatever.
With the wiffle.
Like that. But yeah, I feel like that's the non-musical theater kids going to see musical theater.
I will say though, I saw a version of Chicago at the Stratford Festival a couple years ago that was like they did it real comedy, like. And then we came home and watched the movie, and we were like, it's all there, but it's not the same vibe. And they just announced that Chicago's coming, and I'm like, I don't even want to, it might ruin it, my vision that I have of this, like, almost this funnier version of Chicago they did at Stratford a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So, that said, I think with Tommy, I just want to see any version of it live, because I saw a pretty bad Rock of Ages, like a pretty mid Rock of Ages, and that was still
That's too bad. It's a great show.
It still blew my hair back. You know, I knew all the songs of it was younger actors. You know, it felt like an off Broadway version of it, because it was people who were kind of new to the game and had to, like, if you read somebody, like, you go to Hamilton and you read the playbill, and everybody's been on like TV and movies and stuff, and the people
it's like, I was actually on the Broadway version of this before the touring cast playing.
Exactly. But I saw when I saw Rock of Ages, it was like people had like 2 or 3 credits. They still killed it, but it had like audio problems and it had missed cues, and it was just like, it felt, you know. So I want to see like a big grand version of Tommy, because I think it's just a great thing that it had it one way in my head, and then we watched it and it changed my perception of it, especially about like what I was saying earlier about how like my dad like made it seem one way when I was a kid, and he made it seem like a fucking scary nightmare. And I guess it could be a scary nightmare from his point of view, because he did.
As a kid seeing it, sure. Like, it's like very over the top comedy drama, and like, again, trigger warnings for really traumatic things happening. But it's all done so big that for a kid that is scary. You're like, why are you doing so much? I don't get it. Is this real? Am I dreaming? I don't know.
I think the closest I've ever experienced to my dad experiencing that was I went to see American Pie 3 with my aunt, who like I don't talk to very often. And there's a scene in that movie where like they're cutting his pubes and it goes through a fan, like, and I'm there with my aunt who's also
like
yeah, it sucked.
I mean, serves you right for going to see American Pie anything with anyone in your family.
It was like the only thing in theater, and she was like, dude, like, I'll take you to a movie, and I was, you know, I wanted to hang out with my auntie, you know. Yeah, this, you know, I built it up, and that's been a theme on Hey, Did You See This One With Me, especially, where I build these things up in my head, especially the horror movies. I build them up for decades in my head, and then you finally see it. Nightmare on Elm Street is not a scary movie, you know? It's fun. It's
for the time it probably was, but now it's camp.
That was the next point I was going to make. This thing was probably a nightmare and freaked people out in the 70s, but now it's just like, I felt like I was watching Hair, or Jesus in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, or Jesus Christ Superstar. Like, it had that sort of grandiose sort of appeal.
There's like a certain intensity to this movie that it still is disturbing. It's not scary, but I would say that it's scarier than Nightmare on Elm Street is, for sure. It still kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Well, it's unsettling, and it's also like, even though obviously in the movie version, like, it's very like imagery and whatever is used, it's still very much rooted in reality. Like, terrible things happen to people. People are the scariest thing that exists. So like, sure, you can like fall asleep and you're like, oh no, it's Freddy Krueger. But like, that's not going to happen to you. Like, that's not real. So when you see things portrayed that are real and terrifying, that hits different.
Yeah, I
don't
agree.
love it.
I absolutely agree with that. The biggest moment in this movie that I think people have honed in on over the last 40 years, and the part that I think that my dad was almost trying to warn me about, was the Acid Queen segment of the movie, because that is that way anyway. Fucking backwards.
They put him on a super cool like robot helmet on his head that's full of
needles
syringes everywhere. Yeah,
people can't see it if they're just listening to this, but
that's true.
I got a picture.
That's true. But I feel like that section is like open to interpretation, because This is almost halfway through the movie at this point. This is like the end of Act 1, I would say. Showing, or maybe the beginning of Act
Pinball Wizard
2.
is actually the end of Act 1.
Really?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
And then when you come back in for Act 2, it's like Tommy kind of actually like rising to fame and dealing with all of that.
If you split
That's the
it,
second.
if you split it into 2 acts like a stage play, though.
Yeah, because usually if you're doing stage play, you've got Act 1 is like what, like an hour,
Hour and a half.
just over an hour. Yeah,
Yeah.
like hour 20, hour 30, depending. And then the second act is like 45 minutes max.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. Since we were watching a movie, I broke it up into 3 acts. But you're right, because a lot of when you go to see a stage play, when they come back, they bring it home. It's like its own. It's like the second episode more than an act. You know.
Very much so. Yeah, you do a little synopsis of what you just saw, and then before intermission, and then carry on.
And then carry on. At any rate, I thought that this segment could have been open to interpretation because there's a lot of stuff going on at this point. The dad, the stepdad Bernie, is established. This is past the point where, he gets traumatized as a kid. He's seeing the mom tells.
We should probably
maybe back up
specifically tell what happens, because we haven't really said it yet.
Like from the top. Let's walk through.
Well,
it.
I'll run through it really quick.
That's what I was about to do, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So basically, after the father goes to war, he's considered missing in action.
Right. That's crucial.
Yeah. 5 years later, his wife starts seeing somebody else, but it's important to mention that, essentially the same day she finds out that he's gone missing, she goes into labor and gives birth to Tommy.
It's actually the day that they actually win the war, that the Nazis surrender.
So it's a happy moment for everybody, except for the fact that the dad doesn't come back. And it's never established that he dies. And years later, once this new man has entered the picture, Frank, I believe his name is?
Bernie.
Oh, is it Bernie?
It is Frank. It's his camp is called Bernie's camp. I don't know why.
Okay.
Also, this is also
Frank's
a different
camp sounds
thing
way
from
better.
like the movie to stage, but I'll let you continue. I'll go back to it. But
so one
Frank.
night, Frank and Tommy's mother are
Nora,
in bed.
I think.
Nora, yeah, are in bed, and they're startled by the reappearance of Tommy's father, who is in his military uniform, and he has a horrible face burn. And a struggle breaks out between Bernie and the father, and he ends up killing Tommy's dad in this.
I think there's.
In this version,
I think there's more of a layer to it, especially in the movie. I obviously haven't seen the play, but I think it's heavily implied that they were having sex.
Oh yeah.
Because they're super sweaty, and then the dad comes in. So the reason why he's beyond traumatized, not just because he witnessed his dad get murdered by getting smashed in the head with a lamp, but also he caught his stepmom or his stepdad, who his mom has told him is his uncle. them having sex, and then he sees the uncle stepdad bash his estranged father with it's crazy. It's one of those like layered moments that I couldn't even like. We were kind of talking over the movie, but I stopped and I was like, guys, did
you see that?
Yeah.
Did you see this one?
It's
crazy.
I think it's also important to mention that he witnesses all this through the reflection in a mirror.
Yeah.
Because mirrors are there's a real heavy symbolism throughout the movie when it comes to mirrors and seeing things through mirrors. It's, I guess, sort of implied that like you're not seeing what the actual act is, you're seeing just a reflection of it. But then Bernie and the mom, kind of sit him down and try to convince him that he didn't see anything, he didn't hear anything, and he can't tell anybody about this. Yeah.
Never in your life. Yeah.
And it basically caused him to go into a disassociative state and stop talking and listening to things and seeing things. But he isn't actually. He's sort of in this weird state where he's witnessing the world through a constant psychedelic, heightened, maximalist version of everything around him. So rather
it's like
than
his version of enlightenment, I guess, is like being able to see things from a different perspective.
A crazy perspective. Yeah. So nothing in this movie, in terms of the logic of the movie makes sense, but it's because you're seeing it through the eyes of somebody who's kind of lost their marbles a little bit, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting too with that scene in particular. So they changed it for the movie, but the album story and the stage story are the same, which is weird. So they went back to the OG. In the movie, we have Mr. Walker coming home. He gets killed by his stepfather. And then both Nora and Frank are basically complicit in the murder. In the album version, Mr. Walker comes home and kills the lover and in the altercation. So like they're kind of like there's like a moment where they're like, probably like making out on a couch or whatever. And then Mr. Walker comes home. Tommy hears his dad come home, kind of like runs down the stairs, and there's a whole altercation and he shoots the lover dead. So it's actually the dad. And then that's the same in the stage version. And you also have like this whole moment of like Mrs. Walker turning Tommy away because like she knows that something's about to get messy, but she doesn't realize when she turns him away, she's turning him directly to face the mirror and see everything. Anyway, right. So she tried to protect him.
So what's
the stage version? The parents are a lot lovelier.
Right.
Than the movie.
They're real bad in this movie.
They're real bad.
What's the ramification for the father being the father figure? Does the cousin character still exist? Like, does all that stuff happen?
It does, yeah. All of that still exists, which is also why when we were watching it last night, I was like, wait, but that's your brother or something, like the mom's brother. I was trying to figure out family dynamics, and then I was like, oh, because it's different. I forgot. But yeah, I mean, the parents end up like going to court, or Mr. Walker's taken to court in the stage version as well, and he's basically gets off for self-defense.
They robbed us of a court sequence?
Oh, yeah.
Gee whiz.
Oh, man. I love a court sequence, especially if they're singing.
I want to see somebody swearing on a holy Bible in rock form.
I swear on this holy Bible.
Exist in some rock opera already, right? Like that.
It must, yeah.
It must.
It's probably sung by Meatloaf. If the way that I just did it there, yeah. It just works. I also wanted to, before we move on from this opening bit, the post-war camp, Frank's camp, really gave me like post-war capitalism boomer vibes. Like a camp where we got to go repopulate, we got to spend money, And the mom, we see the mom when she finds out her husband has passed. She's working in a bomb factory, which is pretty crazy too. She's manufacturing these missiles, and they're loading pinballs into the missiles. Like that's not how they're made, but the symbology is there, right? Of it's foreshadowing, obviously.
There's a lot of balls in this movie. There's ball bearings. There's pinballs. There's yoga balls with like the bouncy ones.
Uncle Frank's balls.
The disco balls.
Disco balls.
There's a lot of balls.
Yeah. I think I said it last night that it's so wild to think about within, not even 2 generations removed from us. There was a time where, your country was like, remember, you need to have lots of kids because millions of people just died in a war. That's wild to think about. That like within our grandparents' generation, that was kind of a reality,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in all of there was also a genocide, right? So like, like it was like the herd was culled in a lot of ways during the World War I and World War II era. Like it I can't even fathom. Like that's why our grandparents are the way that they are, and they have this twisted view of reality. And even like
it's trauma.
Even this our 60-year-old like my parents are 60, so they're kind of like me. They're right on that cusp of Gen X, millennial.
Yeah, my parents are around the same age as your parents. Are 63, I think.
Yeah, so they have they kind of see it from both sides. They're firmly rooted in Gen X ideology, but they're old enough that like they're basically boomers, and their parents, because the generations kind of sit on fences down the road. So that means that my grandparents were like born early enough to basically be late silent generation, but were considered baby boomers. It's really interesting how we compartmentalize people into these like generations, but it's a sliding scale, and I identify more with like I'm a hard millennial. Like elder millennial is the term for like where I was born. So I'm gonna identify more with like a younger Gen X, but really like I lived the 90s, right? So I'm pretty anti-capitalism in a lot of ways. I'm pretty like anti-fascism.
I think I gained my sort of self-awareness in like 1994.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when I was
I'm
born.
a human being.
And you're smack dab in the middle of being a millennial.
Wait, you telling me that you came out the same year as Jurassic Park?
I did. So many great things happened that year.
Yeah,
It was mostly me.
I came out the same year as Back to the Future, and
Oh, that's pretty good.
yeah, and Final Fantasy 1.
Cool.
There, I did it. I fit a Final Fantasy reference in
Yeah,
this
have
goddamn
to.
episode.
I just wanted to touch on also what you were saying with like the whole like Bernie's camp and the capitalism. So it's interesting. I was watching the director and Pete kind of talk about what was created from the album to make it into a movie. And that core idea of this film about like capitalism being the absolute worst and destroying the younger generation by older people just being greedy and like just abusing power, whatever. That's all Russell. That's all Ken Russell as the director. That was just a very, very strong belief of his, which is fair, understandable, but it's very different from the original, where it's much more focused on like Tommy's spirituality and enlightenment, which is also portrayed as much more real than in the movie version, where everything's just like heightened and kind of crazy psychedelic. But yeah, so that's all Russell, the director.
I wasn't 100% sure what a holiday camp was, so I looked it up, and it's basically just like almost like a resort, but not as fancy and nice. It's like a collection of cabins and small homes that you go to vacation in, essentially.
Kids camp, but for adults.
Yeah. It's just kind of an interesting form of camping, I guess, like a more sort of luxurious version of camping.
Being in the woods.
You know what's interesting about it's like when you get sent to camp, but for adults. But do you know what it reminds me of? My dad lives. It's called a trailer park, but it's like a summer destination where you have a camper.
Yeah, and they're like beautiful and like kind of like built
Exactly.
into the ground, and like all the cute little streets that are named after like trees.
Absolute-
You're like, oh,
Have
yeah.
you been to this place? It's in Bend.
Maybe.
It's Grand Bend.
Yes, I might have been to the same one. My friend had one, and I would go with her in the summertime. It might be the same one.
It's literally the streets are named, the little roads are named after trees, and
Yeah.
it's on a
Oh my
giant.
God, it's so cute.
It's on a giant sandbar.
Yes, that is the one.
It is. You've met. Okay,
Yep.
so I go up there like once a year, once
so
or
cute
twice
up
a year
there.
to hang out. My dad's wife has converted, instead of having that like sort of shitty like half grass front, grass and pebbles and dirt, she dug it out. This happened probably in the mid 90s, probably around when you were born. She dug it out, and she got sand from the sandbar, from like the sand hill, and filled it in, and she calls it beachfront property. So you're sitting around the fire with your sandals off, your feet fully in the sand, and that's what this concept reminds me of, because it's basically a trailer park, but the trailers aren't like trailers you live in year round. Everybody packs up and goes home in October, right?
Yeah. It's a choice rather than like, I can't afford a home and I am
Exactly
living here. Yeah.
That's why it's that like mid luxury. Like you have to be able to afford to do that. And she's retired, so she goes up and spends most of the summer up there. Well, my dad's back home. He still prints shirts. He prints T-shirts in his garage, and it's a literal sweatshop out there. And she's just at this
Sweaty.
this resort. Trauma.
Oh, also, I will say this song,
Tommy,
the
do you
Bernie's
hear me?
Holiday Camp, that was added. That's not from the original, and it's also not in the stage play. Champagne, which we'll probably talk about later, was added, and also the song Mother and Son, which is later on in the film. But yeah, Bernie's Holiday Camp was added because the director wanted this to be about capitalism being the worst. The worst.
It has that vibe too, because everybody's got like colorful dresses on,
Oh, it looks stunning.
Frank's really smarmy and gross. I don't know if I mentioned this while we were watching, but he moves differently than everybody else during this segment. Like, everybody's like very like proper and they're dancing in unison and choreographed, and he's just like kind of like a Disney villain, like slithering around and like
used car salesman and like kind of like
fully.
Ugh,
and
gross.
He looks like a cross between Javier Bardem and who's
a stack of hamburger meat.
Kind of looks like
He's
Ernest
actually
Borgnine.
like a pretty big actor. I know I think he played Bill Sykes in the original Broadway version of Oliver and like a bunch of other things. He was also in a bunch of Russell's other movies, I think. He was like, I need him. He can't sing. I don't care. I need him in this movie.
I was looking at his thing, his IMDb last night, and he was in something called Oliver 2, What a Twist TV movie.
Bless. I'm sure I've probably actually seen that.
Seen that?
Probably. He's in Gladiator. He's
also in Gladiator.
He's like the guy who owns all the slaves or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Just continuing
Seems like that guy.
Yeah, just continuing the theme of being a complete scumbag.
You don't get career bad guys as much as you did back in the 70s and 80s, but you do get career good guys. You get people who will only play good characters until
there are some actors who
like Ethan Hawke we talked about.
They have it in their contract that they cannot play a villain and they cannot lose a fight and they have to be a specific type of character arc.
It's all about branding.
It's kind of changing now. You don't have it as much as you used to. But I can only think of a couple off the top of my head, like Tom Cruise, I guess. Yeah, he's never played a villain. He's played a piece of shit in a couple things.
But like the mastermind, I guess, that's... Well, Jake Gyllenhaal, I feel, plays both, right? He usually plays more dark and villainy.
Yeah.
He's also done lighter stuff, right? Am I crazy?
I mean, he played Mysteria, who does like sort of a clandestine heel turn, spoilers, but also he's like Nightcrawler, and he's in that fucking weird like art horror movie. Donnie Darko was kind of a
cowboy movie where they kiss.
Yeah.
What a villain!
Oh yeah, Brokeback Mountain.
It's called Bareback Mountain, I think.
Nope, that's just the version you saw.
Beautiful movie.
That's just a movie that I like.
It's so good.
That's one I've never actually seen, but it's one of those zeitgeist movies where you've seen all the tropes.
Yeah, it's really good.
Like parodied, so you just kind of know what happens during the movie.
Yeah, every comedian under the sun made their 1,000 gay jokes, and everybody was like, "Okay, we get it."
And then also, immature. There's that episode of South Park where Chef gets mauled by a bear at the end.
I don't know.
So just that's what happens to one of the characters in Brokeback Mountain. He gets mauled by a bear, right? Like that's.
Oh.
In this episode of South Park, it's right after Isaac Hayes got into a fight with Trey Parker and Matt Stone because he's a Scientologist, and they were making all those anti-Scientologist movies. So they took clips of his voice.
Yes.
It's a famous South Park episode. Anyway, it's really funny what they do. It's kind of sad in retrospect, but it's also...
They kill Chef and bring him back as like Darth Vader.
They bring him back... Well, they bring him back as like a zombie too. But yeah, right. It's... he gets mauled by a bear. Anyway...
Yes, Oliver Reed has been in a billion movies and musicals.
Yeah. Can't sing,
and TV shows.
Can't sing. Bless him. Bless his heart.
He kind of just goes like this when he sings. But it works.
Like it's fine if you don't sing. Like it's okay because you are giving the vibe that you need to give, and I don't like it. So thanks.
Yeah, you got the ick. One of my notes was Bernie is giving the ick.
Yeah, I got the ick real quick. A lot of this movie gives me the ick, though. There were multiple times. I don't know if you noticed, Steven. I guess I was like kind of in the middle of you two, and there were scenes happening, and I was like, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I just want to crawl in my skin and die. This is the worst.
Actually, that's not even what I wrote. When he's kissing on the mom, I wrote, Bernie has the bad touch.
The bad touch. Do not want. Too sweaty.
No.
Even just the name Bernie is kind of like a skeevy sounding name. Oh, that's true.
What? But why? But why then? Is it Bernie's holiday?
It's so strange. That. Yeah, like.
I mean, there's Ernie's. No, there's Tommy's holiday camp at the end of the movie that Ernie runs. But it's still not I don't understand.
Maybe Frank's name is actually Bernie or something, or he's naming it after somebody. Who knows?
Who knows?
It reminds
me. But also that generation of person there were just nicknames that people had that were just other names.
Are
Like, that makes sense.
Frank and Bernie like Tim and Timothy, or Richard and Dick?
It's Bert and Ernie, but Frank and Bernie. It's the new version.
I don't know, but like my grandpa, his name was John, but everyone called him Jack.
Yeah, Jack and
And I was
John
like,
are.
Oh, it's a big thing in Newfoundland too. I know, like with like my partner's parents, they have like their actual names, and then they never go by those names. It's completely different.
So strange.
They
Kinda
go
like
by
someone calling you
landlubber and
Duke or
peas
Ace.
pudding.
Peas pudding.
Have you ever had Jake's dinner? Your partner's a noof.
Oh yeah, we
My-
got Jig's dinner.
My best friend is a noof. My one of several best friends is a noof. Steve, you're my best friend. Don't worry. Um, but anyway, Christmas time at his place, he'd always invite me over for Jig's dinner and like get the salt cod and the peas pudding, and his dad would make
So
gross
good.
jokes about peas pudding and what happens to peas pudding after you eat it. Salt meat, salt beef.
Salt beef
This is making me
one
really
of the
hungry,
best
by the way.
things I've ever tasted in my entire life.
Yeah.
Salt beef is insane.
I want shepherd's pie right now.
Shepherd's pie rules.
Yeah.
It's good. I don't like peas though. I can't do peas. I've tried so many times in my life and I've never been able to do it. So sad.
It's
So I
disappointing.
can't have shepherd's pie
I
with
love peas. I'll just eat a frozen bowl of peas
A
sometimes.
bunch of
fine.
people love peas, and I love like snap peas. I love green beans. There's something about peas specifically, no matter how they've been cooked for me,
What about
I can't do it.
like a
Interesting.
samosa? Samosas have peas in them.
Now I gotta avoid the peas.
Wow.
It immediately changes the flavor for me, and I'm like, gross.
My
Good to know.
I don't know.
uncle was like that
Never
too.
cook me peas.
It's a
Yeah.
thing. It's a thing.
I'll be polite. I'll eat it, but I'll hate you.
These peas are delicious.
I'm burning this house
You
down.
son of a
immediately.
bitch.
You son of a bitch. That's funny. Yeah. What were we talking about? The bad touch.
Yeah, we got a bunch of trauma in a row. Do you think it's all right? Leave the boy with Uncle Ernie. It's not. It's not good. Don't do
It's
it.
bad and it's not good. In my
Ew.
notes, I'm at the point that we already talked about where the dad comes back.
Mhm.
Oh, there's that scene that I wanted to talk about where they're in the casino because the Uncle Bad Touch is trying to like, I guess he's trying to like give Tommy different sensory situations, you know?
You mean like when they go to like the Disney version and they have like the best outfits of all time
When
that
they
are
have
just
like
like
the
90s?
pinball, yeah. When they
But
have,
it
like,
was
the-
before the 90s, so how did that happen?
It was. I think it was. It's this
Such a
aesthetic. It's the aesthetic in my background, basically, on their suits. But it's like a pinball machine. They've got like pinball machine matching
Stunning.
pinball machine costumes, and I got the sense that the stepdad is trying to like get
Yeah.
Tommy to snap out of it, mostly so he can exploit him better.
For sure.
As we
there
find
there
out.
is a softness that I think because the themes of capitalism being horrible and all of this like destroying the lives of everybody in this entire movie, like he's bad. We know he's bad, but like there is that glimmer that he's like, okay, this really bad thing happened, and like also you are a kid, and I don't know how to help you, and the only thing I have is money, so I guess we're going to Disney World. Please just be okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, you know what? Here we go. Check this out. Before I lose it, before I forget.
I'll check it.
Theories.
Okay, that was the
Ooh.
theory corner, but the short version. I'm gonna posit that those glimmers of hope that you see from Frank are kind of leftovers from the original play, because the dad, I assume, is nice all through it.
Both the parents are.
So
They're just a little dumb and a bit neglectful, but they care.
does the mom still have a full mental break the way that she does in the movie?
No. No. It's different. So
Okay.
the song Champagne was added in with like that whole, again, very capitalistic, right? It's like, oh, I have everything, I bought everything, I'm still unhappy, everything sucks, but I want more, that kind of vibe. That is not in the original album, nor is it in the stage version. The closest thing we get to Tommy's mom kind of breaking down is the song Smash the Mirror, which we'll
Mhm.
get to later on. It's similar. It's not the same level of insane. Like she comes home after a bender, which isn't really talked about beforehand. So it seems kind of out of character. Like she's going through a lot with her kid and all of these things that are happening that she kind of blows up at him. But yeah, very different. Out of the blue instead of expected.
It should be noted. It should be noted that the original album is only an hour and 14 minutes long.
Yep.
Which they expanded into a stage play, which probably has an over 2 hour runtime because it's a stage play, that they then condensed into a movie.
Well, movie first.
Right.
Stage play. Yes.
See,
I know, it's so
I can't
weird.
Wrap my head around that.
It usually doesn't happen that way, so it's not.
That's very
it's
rare.
not that weird to think that. I cannot find the MPAA for this movie.
I love that you're still looking.
You might
I've
have
been trying.
Forgot about it.
You might have to literally go. It doesn't matter. It was probably somewhere in the 30,000s. Here, we're gonna do that segment right now, just because I like the song.
The MPAA, everyone. The MPAA. Wow.
We dropped the ball and forgot to look for it. It's one of us could go literally look at it in the credits, but I know you'd have to go to your living room. I don't think
it's fine.
I have a computer right beside my other computer.
No, I think Steve has been like using the internet to look for it.
I believe it.
And I tried to sail the seven seas to get the movie, and it didn't finish downloading. Once Steve was like, "I have it," I was like, "Okay," because it's on Xbox Live. It surprisingly, to me, it was on the Xbox movie service, which is fantastic. I think anybody who has the ability to watch this should just watch it, whether you like musicals or not. It's just fucking so well made.
It's like a history piece at this point. Also, I was gonna say this earlier, but like, I just really wish there was either a museum, like a small museum, or like an art book of just the shots in this movie. Like just like full artwork done of it, because I felt like every 5 seconds I was just seeing a brand new, beautiful, vibrant piece of art the whole way through. It's
certainly one of those things where you're watching it and you're like, you don't get bored because you just want to know what's going to happen next and what the new shot composition is going to look like, and then what new cinematography they're going to do. There's a lot of these really cool shots that I like that almost feel like reality TV in a way, or like shot in reality. It happens in the Acid Queen segment, but it's like the person who's acting is like grabbing the camera and controlling it from this. Yeah.
Also very of the style too of like music videos of that era too, right? Like that kind of like, come with me, be on this journey. You're here. I see you. You're a part of this too now. You're complicit. No, Acid Queen is amazing. I guess, is that our first? It is, isn't it? We have Acid Queen and then Cousin Kevin and then Uncle Ernie. Is that correct? The trifecta of trauma?
I think so, yeah. I believe that's the order. We also get quite a huge time jump, which is interesting.
Yes. So that's also a thing too. We were talking about this last night, but in the stage version, like obviously we have the three Tommies still. We have young Tommy, we have teen Tommy, and then we have adult Tommy. Mm-hmm. Those are all three separate actors. Whereas in the movie, they have young Tommy and then the lead singer of The Who, which I did not realize was the lead singer. I don't know why that didn't click in my brain, because I guess I listened to it. Like I wasn't in the time of like following them and watching like their videos and stuff, so I didn't really know what he looked like.
No,
I just thought it was someone they got. It plays Tommy. Also, the drummer, rest in peace, played Uncle Ernie, which is hilarious. Yeah.
Roger Daltrey still, like, you can go see him at a casino now, and I think he just does Who songs. I don't know what Pete Townsend does now. Is he still alive even?
He is, yeah. So we've lost. I actually have a little bit about the band because obviously it's really, really important. We have Roger.
What? He's been in a lot of stuff actually, surprisingly,
Roger
for
Daltrey,
lead singer of a band. Like,
yeah, he was an icon, right? Like, absolutely insane. Roger Daltrey, plays Tommy as well. Fun fact. He was fired in 1965, a year after the band was formed, because he beat up Keith, the drummer, for bringing drugs over to the band. and he beat him up, and then he was reinstated into the band a week later, and he was like, I shouldn't have done that. Now I need to think about my choices and maybe not beat people up. We have the guitarist who basically is the reason we have Tommy, Pete Townshend. This whole Tommy is basically like him, which is also why it gets rewritten all the time, why it's constantly evolving, because I think he's constantly evolving as both a person and an artist. Mm-hmm. So he's constantly kind of making edits as he goes. We got the bassist, John Entwistle. He has passed. He had a nickname of the Ox and Thunderfingers, and he is the reason why we have Fiddle About and the Cousin Kevin song.
Thanks.
He basically, any bad thing, yeah, he wrote that. He wrote that. And then Keith Moon, unfortunately passed. He was 32. It was 1978. And he had some drug problems. He died of an overdose on a drug called Heminervin, which was a drug that was intended to treat alcohol withdrawal.
I think that when you hear people make jokes or make reference to like a rock star dying and choking on their vomit, I think he was like, that's the person they're referring to. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't like to say joke, but like these things permeate pop culture to a degree that they lose their origin, and it should.
And also, they repeat. Like, exactly. How many people have we lost to that in the Rockstar universe, right?
The guy from
Which is why the band was very against drugs.
The guy from INXS died in a similar way. Fucking Jim Morrison, around the same time, fucking drowned in a bathtub. You know,
like that's wild.
That's crazy. It's insanity that you get.
It feels like it should be impossible unless you're an infant.
Yeah.
Well, it happened in Maryland too, right? Technically.
Yeah.
Well,
theories.
That was a psyop, okay? That was to make the masses be afraid of popular culture, and they're putting friggin' chemicals in the water that are turning the friggin' frogs gay. So, I'm sorry, I'll be right back.
If you're on a bunch of drugs or like boozed out of your mind and you take a bath, you pass out.
Yeah, I guess if it's a big bathtub. My bathtub
is
so small that I would not be able to drown in it because my head wouldn't be able to go under the water because my legs would get in the way.
They're like, rich people with like the big, probably like claw foot bathtubs or whatever. But yeah, acid. Sorry, we can go back. I kind of got us a bit off topic.
Acid Queen.
Acid Queen. So this is also a different.
To Acid Queen, I just want to mention that the last time we see him as a kid is the big Christmas number.
Yeah, the Christmas party.
Where you kept you were like, pay attention. This will mean something later, because they sing a song about it's Christmas time. They're singing about how since Tommy is deaf and blind, he'll never be able to hear the word of God or be saved.
He'll never be saved. He'll be damned forever.
Hard fucking cut to a few years later, and they're literally worshiping Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah,
statues.
What a beautiful scene. Also, Eric Clapton is in that. I didn't even clock
is the preacher in that. Yeah.
At all. Yeah, he did it as a favor to Pete, because Pete helped him get off heroin, which is great. But anyway, that whole scene is full of imagery. It's like the Marilyn Monroe, the false god, and like the fallen idol, because like the statue smashes. Also very like Charlie Manson, and like the giving out like whiskey and pills to like get people to be within. Also, like they're also all blinded, but they're like, oh, but like he can't be saved, he can't participate, and it's like, why would you want to? Are you seeing this? Like,
on another level too, it's also saying that like religion like dumbs and blinds and deafens the masses, not unlike a pill or a booze.
Of course.
Worshipping false idols, you may as well and we were talking about how nowadays this still happens. We have TikTok influencers that kids look up to. We have like Twitch streamers that kids
We have us.
We have us, the biggest influence on the internet as aging fucking millennials.
I was 94, okay? I got time.
You're old. Sorry. You called me old last night. You'll never live it down. You said I'm not as old as you, but, and I was like, I'm gonna get you for this.
Listen, you brought it up. I just volleyed it right back to you. True. That's all.
Yeah, but your penance is now you have to be on this show at least once a month.
For 40 years.
Yeah,
you have to inflate Jason's hemorrhoid pillow. That's your punishment.
I can do that in a separate room though, so like I'm fine.
No, I have to do it
Here we
on
go.
OnlyFans now. Okay, I'm sorry.
Gross.
I quit.
Gross.
You did this. You did this, Steve. You made it weird.
Yep. Let's talk about the Acid Queen.
Yeah, that's the next part.
We're getting there. Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that song is pretty
Go
important too, because it's showing his mom's trauma that she's going through as well, right? And realizing that, he doesn't even realize it's Christmas because he's so out of it, and it's very saddening
Does
to
he?
her. I mean, maybe
Right?
he sees it as like an acid Santa Claus or something, and he's like, "Whoa,
Ho ho ho!
here comes the body of the episode."
What is dumb?
Means he
It
can't
means
talk.
yeah, mute.
Okay, that's
it's
mute?
it's
Okay.
actually like not an accepted term anymore. But
Yeah.
obviously in this time, and it is sung over and over again. It's not. It's what
Yeah,
it's
and
the
like-
words they use. But yeah, it's the old school version of being mute.
I think that the
Yeah.
R slur was a medical term in 1975.
It was
so,
absolutely it was.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
Well, times
It's-
do change.
yeah. Most words evolve, so I mean, we can give the movie a pass for using the term, an outdated term.
Let's play a game of how many words did we say on this show that will be unacceptable to say in 30 years from now?
All of them.
All of
Every
them.
single one.
We have a new alien language at that point.
Yeah, we
Everything
all
else is
speak
thrown
A
out.
hybrid of alien and Russian.
Yep. I mean, even from 5 years ago to now, we've already lost like a whole bunch of words to time and to correctness, and
They're called Roma now.
And
You
to
can't say
empathy.
the G one. You can't say the G word.
Yeah.
this
Girl.
movie.
Can't say it. I'm canceled immediately.
You can't say
Yeah.
girl in this climate.
No.
Didn't you see the Barbie movie?
I actually
But also,
haven't yet.
It's good.
I
It's on
think
my.
it's great.
Me too.
I
I'm really
think that the-
excited.
I think that the church stuff also just kind of presents you with what church is almost to a literal one-to-one scale, and it accomplishes showing us in the audience like how crazy it is that people go to church and do this every week, because all you have to do is replace a couple things and it seems insane, right? And like, oh my god, these
for
people
sure.
have all lost their minds.
Yeah.
The
Swapping
line
out-
between cult and church is like
Oh, is there a
No,
line?
religion is a
right?
cult.
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally
I
a
don't.
cult.
I mean, believe what you want to believe. As long as you're not hateful, I don't care. Do your thing. But like, I don't know. I think that I don't know if there's a line
You're
They're
right.
the same
personally.
thing. I don't particularly care if you want to worship something or have your own personal beliefs, but to me, the movie is pointing out how insane things look. All you have to do is switch a couple things out, and it seems crazy. Like these people are crazy.
I think what I mean more so is the presentation of church is so ingrained in our society that for most people it doesn't look that weird. But you do swap out Jesus with a Marilyn Monroe statue, and you swap out Body of Christ and wine with hard liquor and pills.
Yeah.
And people in like weird, like futuristic, like costumes also like was giving cult vibes.
Wearing Marilyn Monroe masks.
And the Marilyn Monroe masks too. Like it's fucked, dude.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
It reminded me of a scene out of
poignant.
like Escape from LA. I think I said that last
Yeah,
time as well.
yeah.
This feels like something that would be in a Snake Plissken adventure.
I think John Carpenter was might have been influenced by Tommy.
It makes
Some of
sense. He's a
his-
musician and
yeah.
he loves rock and roll, and it would be shocking if it didn't have some sort of profound impact on him.
And
Or
then
maybe he hates it. You never know.
and then Repo was clearly influenced by this kind of thing too, right? It's all going around in a circle. And we were
All
seeing
connected.
we were seeing little moments too that like The Simpsons has pulled a lot of influence, like a lot of their gags from this. When the mom is like, I think was the mom losing her mind. It was very like when Lisa's, I am the Lizard Queen. I know that's Jim Morrison, but just the visual of it for freaking out.
the Acid Queen.
Yeah. Or I think it was what was the Acid Queen actually, yeah. So, yeah, good shit.
But even the name, the Acid Queen, sounds like it would be something out of LA as well, Escape from LA or Escape from New York. Like you would find the Acid Queen in some sort of red light district
Yeah.
in a broken down New York.
It would still be played by what's her face?
Tina Turner.
Yeah, they
Can I
would just
tell you-
cast the exact person.
Can I tell you a fun
mean,
fact?
I mean, who played the woman in Escape from New York?
Pam Grier?
Pam Grier, yeah. who is a similar character but heavily implied that she was trans, which is aces. Sorry, Cass, go ahead.
That's okay. I have some fun facts about the Acid Queen. So, David Bowie was the original want to play the
That would have
Acid
been
Queen.
fucking amazing. Dude.
I know. Didn't work out. Their second one, they offered it to Mick Jagger.
Also great.
But he said that he wanted to sing 3 of his own songs in the film if they got him to be
You're
the
not
Acid
doing
Queen.
start me
Then
up
they're
in the
like,
middle of this.
So listen,
rock
Tina,
opera.
what are you doing before your resurgence in the 80s and doing your own thing? What do you want to do this
She's
crazy?
like, I'm rolling on the river, so let's get it.
Let's go. And she honestly, she crushes. She's so good. She's so good. And yeah, also there is a difference. This is opposite of before, where the movie changed something and the album and the stage kept it the same. In the album and the movie, Tommy does end up taking the drugs and like tripping and having a moment in like what is that torture device? It's like an old medieval one. I can't remember the name of it. That's it, the Iron Maiden. And then in the stage play, because it's also Mr. Walker himself, he basically hears of this kind of place where maybe he might be able to get Tommy some help. He's like, it might be a little bit sketchy, but I don't know. Like, I'm kind of at my wit's end here. I don't know what else to try. And he does bring him to the Acid Queen and pulls him out before anything happens. So Tommy doesn't take the drugs in the stage play, is not R-worded or whatever in that context in the stage play. His dad is like, this is messed up and we're going. So, yeah.
I was curious to see if David Bowie has ever played any of these characters in some capacity, and I like whether it be on stage
You were
or
so
something.
close.
I know. I looked through, and it doesn't seem to be any evidence that he's ever played a character in Tommy in any capacity. Mm-hmm. That'd be cool, though, or would have been cool.
It would have been very cool. I would love to see that, but sadly can't.
You guys keep talking. I want to look at what era he was in.
Well, yeah, I mean, David Bowie was also like a pretty good actor.
Yeah.
Incredible. Also,
he's better than some professional actors in a lot of cases. I watched The Prestige recently, and he plays Nikola Tesla in that movie, and he's like just a straight up weirdo, and it's great.
Forgot he was in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He plays the mad scientist of our real life world, Nikola Tesla.
He was in he was in the Thin White Duke era too. He would have in his glam rock look.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If we can't get David Bowie as the Acid Queen, at least we got Elton John as the Pinball Wizard and Tina Turner as the Acid Queen. All these things are good.
And Jack Nicholson as a fucking mental institution.
The specialist.
The doctor.
You're gonna be in this movie called Tommy.
I just really like it.
I'm playing Tommy.
And
no, you're not,
Pete
Jack.
Townshend is like, get out of my recording booth. I hate you.
In fact, you don't even get a name. Your character doesn't get a name, just a title.
Yeah, he's just the doctor.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
He's credited as the specialist.
But it's great casting because in Cuckoo's Nest and The Shining, he plays a crazy person. So to have him actually be running the asylum in this one, I like things like that in movies where you're cast as the antithesis of what you're
there's a certain level of irony to it.
Yeah, exactly. During this era.
It's cool. Basically casting him as the opposite of the thing that people have sort of begun to know him for. And
for a moment.
He's quite reserved. Yeah. It's so weird. It's such a strange part of the movie where
British
I'm like,
accent, a singing British accent.
Which is like most people when they sing, British people don't sing in a British accent.
Yeah,
look at Ozzy.
Who is a British band?
And
you don't
Ozzy,
hear it when
Who,
they sing.
Rolling Stones.
Yeah. It's all about just vowel placement. Also singer tips. It's because of vowel placement. It's a lot easier to have open vowels and not get stuck on like R's or harder consonants to get sound out. So that's why it happens.
But then look at like the Sex Pistols, and he's yell singing, so it comes through as British, right? So
yeah, that makes
perfect sense. I never thought about it. Like that's been kind of a trope my whole life, where it's like, why do British people sound like they don't have an accent when they're singing? That makes perfect sense because of vowel placement.
So we should say that the Acid Queen part is part of many of Frank's attempts to snap Tommy out of it in some way, right? So he's trying to essentially get him to experience drugs and sex at a young
Trying
age
to
in
help.
order to break the spell that has been placed upon him.
It's like maybe this will
but
open
once-
your mind.
but
Little
once
does he know,
again-
his mind is opened already.
To exploit him more. He does
Yeah.
all these things that he wants to use this kid, because at this part, the kid
He's
is
also
running,
working.
Yeah, he's running
like,
that
at the-
front desk. And I
Yeah.
turned to you and I was like, is that where they got the thing where Bart's working the front desk at the brothel? And you were like, yep.
Yeah, it must be. It's gotta be. Yeah, no, also like the imagery in the scene too. Oh my God. It is absolutely insane. Tina Turner is doing her whole rolling, basically, just like moving real fast, doing crazy acid stuff. We have like images of like the Iron Maiden opening up. We get like the poppies like stuck into Tommy's body, the same as like going to see his father's grave.
Yeah.
But
like
that's exactly
insane.
why she's called
and
Acid
very
Queen.
Jesus-like too.
Exactly. But my interpretation moment, and another Jason's Theory corner here, is because of the poppies and because of the syringes, I think that it's
Opium.
It's heroin. Like it's
Could be opium, because isn't that what
Well,
opium's
LSD
made from poppies?
but so is heroin.
Is it?
Yeah, because it's an
Isn't
opioid.
heroin just morphine?
No, heroin is an opioid. That's
I
made
will
from
say though, I
poppies.
feel like heroin, from my knowledge of drugs, I've never done heroin, but from my knowledge of what it does to people, heroin I think is like it like knocks you out more. Whereas in this
haven't-
whole situation, you see like even though like Tommy is non-responsive in any other way, like it's like he is seeing everything. He's alive. He's thriving. Also, back in the day too, they used to like LSD was usually heavily laced with speed as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you had that kind
Speedballs.
of like rocking, like roller coaster vibe all the way up. So I think it's liquid.
Oh, it is-
LSD.
it is a-
I
it
think
is,
it's liquid LSD, but I could be wrong.
So my,
Heroin is a form of morphine.
so
yeah,
my
and it's
interpret-
just you're almost like dead for a bit.
And morphine is like a very addictive and powerful painkiller, which
Yeah, so
often causes
Opiate addiction.
it's like a narcotic that causes euphoria, basically, and like complete like physical numbness and pleasure.
The way that
Yeah.
I understand how heroin works is you shoot heroin and then you go on like a vision quest, basically, which is not unlike what happens here. And
True.
then
But same with LSD though.
that's true. But with LSD, you're like you can do stuff. You can like
You see
Maybe
how
we should
many
get somebody on the show
syringes
who's
of
actually done heroin
LSD.
true.
to talk about this.
But I will say I know everything I know about heroin from that one season of Breaking Bad. But what I will say
sad.
is yes, it's that. Speaking of trauma, that fucking the whole shit
Ugh,
with her
It hurts.
broke my head.
Hurts bad.
But
I love Breaking Bad.
when when Frank finds him at the end of the scene, he's just like, face down, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I think that scene, that whole sequence, there's a lot to interpret out of it, and it was interesting for us to all sort of talk about it and give our interpretations of it, because I don't think there's a real answer, because it is a psychedelic
art.
trip
What
out.
do you take from it? That's what it is then.
Yeah.
Like that's interpretation always.
Jeez, you can smoke heroin? I didn't know that.
You
Yeah,
can
you
also
can smoke
snort
heroin.
it. You can snort heroin.
Yeah.
Yeah, snorting it, injecting it, and inhaling it
Which
are all
probably
the
all
three most
have-
common ways to do it, which is all of the ways you can do stuff, I assume.
Well, you can hoop
Eat
it
it.
too. You can hoop
Yeah.
it. You can eat it.
Put it in your eyeballs.
So
Yeah.
I feel like we were playing Bop It.
Twist
Bop
it.
it.
You can twist it. Yeah.
No.
Pass it.
Hoop
Pull it.
Don't pull it or hoop it. Jesus.
Anyway,
I left an.
we are both right. It is a form of morphine, but it's also an opioid, and it's derived from what would be typically used as a heavy painkiller.
And
There's
another
also like a whole opioid crisis too, right? It
Exactly.
was like all these people
Yeah.
get
There's
hooked on.
a really good Vice documentary about these Roma people who live. I think it's somewhere in Eastern Europe, but they harvest the poppies, and then this group of Roma people.
Oh, poppies are also super hallucinogenic as well.
yeah.
Sorry.
And
Yeah.
the Roma people who live in the area go into the poppy fields after they've been harvested and scrounge what they can, and fucking make this like these really like low dose heroin sort of adjacent drugs out of them just by like basically freebasing it.
And it's
So
also why in The Wizard of Oz, when they go through the poppy field,
they
get
all
real
fucked.
weird
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
can't see straight anymore because drugs.
And they all fall asleep,
Yeah. They're like, oh.
except for the Tin Man.
So
And the
I'm very
Scarecrow.
awake. Please wake up. I'm
Yeah.
bored. We gotta go.
Puppies will make them sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, opium used to be like legal too. Like you could just go to an opium den and get fucking whacked out of your mind and
Forever.
fall
Like,
asleep. Yeah.
opium dens have been, a thing throughout history for a
And then
very,
in,
very long time.
And then in Inception, they bring back the opium dens, but instead of opium, you just Inception it.
Dream
Inception.
dens. Yeah. Actually, I don't know. I haven't watched the movie in a very long time. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's completely removed from its source material, but the opening of that comic book, they find Quatermain in like an opium den, and he's been there for years, just like getting high constantly. So he's like basically like a skeleton. Like, like they should have done that with Sean Connery. That would have been great.
They wrote
they
TJ.
thinking?
Bring me some more opium.
They wrote TJ Miller
My eyes
off of
wearing off.
Silicon Valley. He went to an opium den and got addicted. That's how they wrote TJ Miller when he got canceled. They wrote him off Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot that
Get
he got
outta
canceled.
here.
He's kind of back now, isn't he?
Yeah, his cancellation was more of a mental break that like
Well, he had like a tumor in his head or something crazy that was causing him to like go nuts.
years ago. He got that removed, but he has these breaks because he's kind of a weird guy too. And I guess it was
Yeah.
I guess he like was on a train and hit the fire alarm and like had a mental break, and he might have done a domestic situation during that.
Listen, we can grow as people,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I believe that.
Is
Just
that a
don't
re-
continue to be
Is that
the
a
worst.
reference to what we were talking about last night with a certain? Anyway, we can grow as people. I believe.
Uncle Ernie is not forgiven, though.
No.
He is bad. He is bad. He
And
can't
he's
be
always
trusted.
bad. He's bad from beginning to end. There's never a moment where you're like, at least he's trying to help Tommy, because he is trying to help Tommy, but he's
No,
helping
Uncle-
him in the
No.
worst possible
He's
Uncle
trying to
Ernie,
make money.
the
He's
fiddler
money
man.
guy.
The fiddler.
Oh,
man.
Fiddle about.
Right,
That's
right.
Uncle
Fiddle
Ernie.
about man. I think my interpretation of that whole sequence was that was a last ditch effort to just do fucking something equally messed up to Tommy. Same
Right.
with the like cousin. I don't know if
Yeah, cousin Kevin is tough. Also, like the stage play goes a bit more into cousin Kevin being like the main kind of bully, but like you also see Tommy at school and like all the kids are kind of like piling up on him and
Right.
being horrible. But yeah, cousin Kevin is like physical torture for the funsies of it because he's bored and he's understimulated and he's like just an evil little kid who's been raised to be evil. And then you just have Uncle Ernie being the worst. Yeah,
So
he's
I-
just creepy. He's a perv creepy guy and he sucks.
we're actually
Yes.
at that part.
Yeah.
We should talk about the fact that there's
That
this
cousin Kevin looks exactly like Evan
Well,
Peters.
he looks
He
like
looks
Evan Peters.
exactly like Evan Peters. I did not notice this before. It is Evan Peters.
There's
They
a
have
lot
very
of-
similar eyes, I think, is the main thing.
and
like,
mannerisms.
And
yeah, mannerisms.
and
yeah.
smile and hair, like when Evan Peters grows out his hair, it's like that, like those curls.
the curls,
Yeah.
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 If they were ever to remake this movie, just
They
give him a
would
call.
yeah.
There's
I don't know
lot
if
Do
of,
Evan
it.
Peters can sing, but
there's a
I
lot
think he
of
can. I think he's done singy stuff in either like American Horror
In
Story
American
or
Horror Story, yeah.
something.
right.
I think he can sing.
he's a very like he's a
I can
very
see.
stage style actor when he acts in stuff. This whole sequence though has a lot of piss imagery, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's so much piss in this movie.
A lot of yellow themes.
The
Oh,
yellow
remind me
room.
to talk about this after we go through the Uncle Ernie stuff because it actually makes sense visually. It's a very cool shot that I did not.
I wrote down
I mean,
part of a
think that-
conversation between you two from this
Okay.
part. Cass says this filming from this part gives me Clockwork Orange, and then
Very Clockwork Orange
Steve
vibes.
interjects and piss.
Both correct.
yeah, it's like
By the
Clockwork
way-
Orange mixed with piss.
Yeah.
Instead of orange, it's piss.
It's the color of
Piss,
your
yeah.
background, Steve.
Yeah, Clockwork piss.
Clockwork.
Uh,
Ew.
that whole moment, I think, was meant to be like a metaphor or an allegory for like him taking him in there and just pissing
Just
all over
pissing
him
all
for
over
real.
him.
Yeah,
And then
Oh,
he
yeah.
sprays him down with the hose too.
Yeah, and irons him on the ironing board.
right. Yeah,
That's fun. Burns him with a cigarette.
he's just a bully. He is the bully.
He sucks. And he's
He's-
like, "Wow, you can't do anything, so I can do anything to you, but
Yeah.
I will.
He still feels stuff. Like
Yep.
he's not.
He's trying to get a reaction, right? Like he's a kid that's just like, I get nothing ever. So like I'm just gonna, what can I do to like, are you gonna flinch this time? Am I gonna
Yeah.
like break through it? No, he doesn't. Like it's just hurting a kid who's traumatized already.
It's
So
And he has a
like I can't,
swastika on his jacket too.
yep. Yep.
which is wild. It's just like he's got no respect, you know. Like the war just ended not even that long ago, and
Yeah.
he's already adopting that imagery.
Yeah.
I think this is also where we get our next sort of moment of mirror imagery where he leaves Tommy in front of the mirror just to kind of stare into it. And this is where I'm starting to be like, oh, okay, so what Tommy is, his essence is like trapped in like a mirror realm or something like that.
Absolutely.
And he's like trapped in the mirror because
And
he
his
lost
true
himself
self,
in the mirror when he
I
saw
think,
his
is
dad
seeing.
get murdered.
Yeah, exactly. I think like his true self is seeing it from the other side of the mirror, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
I'm here and you're in front of it.
Yeah,
It's
and
that.
I mean what backed that sort of thought process up for me was that when he becomes himself again, when he becomes free, it's when he is literally thrown through a mirror by his mom.
Yeah,
And he's like, I'm out. I'm not in the mirror anymore.
I gotta go. Yeah, no, the
Which is
mirror is
cool,
very
but
much
it
a
is kind
thing.
of on the nose, but it's still cool. Like it's a cool visual metaphor for him literally breaking out of a mental prison that was
Yeah.
created by his parents.
And
And
solved
also a
by
song that's
pinball.
been like from the conception of this entire like concept album to film to stage, like Smash the Mirror is very much a thing. So I'm glad yes, it is on the nose, but it's also like I don't know how else you could have taken that song
Yeah,
from the
sometimes
album
visual
and
metaphor doesn't need to
made it
be
happen.
super complex. You can do something very basic and it's like
Yeah, it's still
it's
impactful.
impactful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, cousin Kevin sucks.
Yes,
He
he does.
sucks. He's the worst.
He's a
Is
real
he?
bag of
I don't
piss.
And
know.
piss.
I think Uncle Ernie is the worst.
Well, that's the next thing. We get a gross scene where the dad's like, "You want to babysit my kid? Here's some money. Go." And then it doesn't even really bear repeating.
No, it's bad.
He sings a song
And
called
it's so
"Fiddling About."
campy and silly and like,
Which is
ooh, I got a trench coat on. Am I naked under it? Look at my
Yeah.
It
water
adds-
bottle
knows.
it
hanging
being
out of my jacket.
campy adds to the nightmare of it.
It feels like a nightmare. Like it feels like a weird lucid dream that like your brain is trying to make sense of, but all you feel is horror. Like you could like I don't know if you guys have ever had nightmares where it's like this is the silliest thing, but
Oh, yeah.
but you wake up sweating.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very much that.
It's funny you should
It's
say that. I
not
literally I think this movie gave me nightmares last night.
Probably.
I should say I like dreaming, like I like having dreams, so I don't necessarily experience nightmares per se, unless it's like I'm having a fever dream, like when you're sick. When I had COVID, it was the first time in a long time I experienced fever dreams, and those are nightmares, where the same thing repeats over and over.
Oh, that's the worst.
But a
I
lot of
hate
the
those.
time, since I like movies and TV and video games and stuff, when I'm trapped in a dream and it seems real and it's kind of scary, it's like, oh, it's just like
I'm
a movie.
dreaming. You can also like kind of lucid dream it a bit. I'm the same way. Like I can kind of flip the switch and be like, what's gonna happen next? Because I'm already asleep. So shoot me with your banana gun.
Yeah,
That's been a dream of mine.
But
So-
last night I did have a nightmare adjacent dream where I experienced like loss and joy and like a lot of emotions, and like I woke up being like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
And I think it was directly based off of this movie.
For sure.
I think it permeated right through to the psyche, because I don't usually watch a movie and then I am affected by it like this, right?
The visuals are insane. Like
Yeah.
it's I mean not the same as like that whole kind of like subliminal messaging that they would put in movies and stuff, but like also very 70s and very 80s. But it kind of does that because of how jarring everything is and how quickly it goes. Like your brain doesn't have time to process it in the moment. And what happens when you go to sleep? You process your day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna stick.
I did have that thing too, that this doesn't happen to me very often, but I woke up in the night and I was like, whoa, the fuck? and I fell back to sleep into that dream again.
Oh, it happens to me all the time. It's my favorite.
Me too. And
I love it.
I'm glad it happened. I'm glad it happened this time, but it's weird. Like, we'll go back to the fever dream element, and this has a lot of fever dreamy stuff, especially the fiddle scene, the fiddle sequence. It feels very like icky and gross, and like it's the kind of shit that where your head goes when you're just like dying on your couch or in your bed, like with the flu,
Drifting off, and it's like, oh, I just saw the worst thing in my brain. Why did my brain do that to me? I'm trying to sleep. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. No, it's really messed up. But basically, yeah. So summary, bad things happen to Tommy, and his uncle is a perv.
Bad things happen to good people in this movie.
Yeah.
Because the next note that I even have is the mom descending into alcoholism.
Yeah.
She just walks around with a bottle of champagne at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is the part, I think you guys touched on it a little bit just a moment ago, but we basically get these flashes of Tommy. A thing will happen to him, and then he'll see part of his psyche in the mirror.
Yeah.
And then the three parts show up in the mirror, and then they come together to create the whole. And then he gets up and just out of instinct just walks to a car junkyard, finds a pinball machine, and this is when we get he gets brought home by the police, and the police brings him back to be like, he was playing this fucking pinball machine and killing it. And that's when the stepdad goes,
are like, what?
Dollar signs in his eyes, and then hard cut to him becoming the pinball wizard.
Living in a mansion and doing all this stuff. Yeah. The really cool thing, and I didn't notice this on the first watch, but it makes sense. All of the traumas that happen to Tommy are all coded in a very specific color. So we have red for the acid queen, we have yellow for the piss color, cousin Kevin,
and for the piss trauma,
and everything with Uncle Ernie is all done in like this really dark blue lighting, like a nightmare blue. And so every single time Tommy goes back to the mirror, he sees himself in those colors reflected. They can join. It's very cool. I love that imagery. I think it's absolutely beautiful and stunning. Also, I will say too, you asked me last night how they did the whole pinball thing, like that whole transition, because it's very easy in a movie to just, we're going to the junkyard and we're going to go film this here and kind of change it up. And I was thinking about it more in the stage version. They actually have the events happen in a different way. So we have Acid Queen, and then we have Uncle Ernie, and then we have Cousin Kevin. And then Cousin Kevin, after torturing Tommy and just messing with him, brings him to the arcade because he has to babysit him. So he's like, well, he's got to come with me and I want to go. And just throws him in front of a pinball machine and is like, haha, let's throw a quarter in for funsies. Let's see what happens. And then like everything blows up. And we have like the champ version, which is Elton John, plays basically all of the parts of the stage version, where you have Cousin Kevin singing, you have all the kids singing, like people are like, what is happening right now?
What you're describing is exactly how it's always played out in my head. And when they're in that scene when they're in like the Disneyland like arcade part near the beginning when he's a kid, I was like, oh, we're going into Pinball Wizard right now. He's like, he's gonna learn in the whole movie's from there was going to be about his pinball wizardry, as it were. But no, that is way better, because I feel like it needs to be more of an accident than all of his cells coming together, and it's kind of doesn't have a lot of context the way
it's almost like fate in a way, like it's like happenstance that it's just like it's also, I was saying this last night too, of like kind of being either like the gifted kid or like the neurospicy kid or the weird kid who's just like hated for so long, and then like people find out they're talented or good at something, and then everybody's like, you're amazing, what, you're so cool, also I can definitely make money off of you, like just like immediately switching gears. And like at that point, the people who traumatized Tommy before stop doing that. They don't do like those specific characters. Yeah, great shot, Steven.
Also,
they just stop because they're like, I can make money. You're good at this. I'm not gonna mess with perfection here. Just go. But that doesn't stop the trauma from already being there.
Before I forget, so I fully don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to.
No, that's fine.
I just want to point out that it's the primary colors. Like it's
Yeah, of course.
blue, yellow, and
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't make any other color without the 3 primary colors,
And you make the full rainbow spectrum when they all kind of come together.
and he's
And it's
even
horrible-
wearing white when they come together. He's wearing like a white costume.
Yeah.
like a prism.
Yeah.
But I do fully
it's terrible.
agree with what you were saying, Cass. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to point that
No,
out.
I
that's
mean-
fine. Go for it. Live life. I love it.
Again, we're
why we
seeing
do
it.
this.
This is why we
Yeah,
do this.
We're seeing it in the mirror. We see that those 3 main traumas, as horrible as they are also the thing that kind of builds him into who he becomes eventually, right?
Of course.
So as
The
shitty as
builds all
trauma
of
is,
us.
yeah, exactly. It's like we are how we deal with our traumas, I suppose. But even though he's the hero, he ends up passing on that trauma to the next generation, which is,
Yeah.
unfortunately how life generally works.
You can try your hardest, but it's that. There is no perfect world where the traumas don't affect. Like, it's just human nature. We will always pass down things, even if we want to do the exact opposite of what is done to us. Somehow we'll still mess it up and pass on a new trauma, and then that has to be fixed. And it's
Yeah.
like this constant pinball of going back and forth
Metaphor's
between
strong.
generations where the same things just keep happening.
Yeah, and then we get to see Tommy's mom have a shit-fueled meltdown,
Oh, the champagne scene.
which
Yeah.
made me so uncomfortable, and I think I kept going, ugh,
Yeah.
Ugh.
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 Turn it off.
Oh, why? No. It's just chocolate pudding. It's just chocolate pudding.
That's what I kept saying.
It was not. It was.
It's chocolate pudding. It's chocolate pudding.
That
It was
is
melted
not
chocolate,
the implication.
actually.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys,
Chocolate.
but the traumas in my life have sort of formed who I am. So now I'm not
Oh,
saying.
Yeah,
course.
all of my
Yeah.
traumas are shit related for sure.
and baked beans
Yeah.
Oh my
and
God.
champagne.
So let's talk about that sequence a little bit because I couldn't believe how
It's crazy.
unveiled cocaine illusions it was. Like, she's rich, she's got nothing better to do than drink all day. The room is white. The bed is
Also traumatized.
a white
So it's like, what else am I going to
circle,
do?
yeah.
I'm going to drown myself
drinking
in
champagne.
anything. Yeah.
She's wearing a white fur coat. She's wearing a white, like they may as well have had. They may as well have had her. What the fuck? Why can't I do that? They may
You
as
can
well,
do it. We believe in you.
She should have been doing a bunch of cocaine, but
I think
whole
that was
time.
kind of the
They're like,
implication.
oh my
That
God,
was
they
the
should have had her
implication.
laying in like a bank of snow.
or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then throw baked beans and melted chocolate on the snow, and then
Well, we all know
becomes a
that
mess.
cocaine is a diuretic.
True. And
It's
actually,
true.
so what happens is she's flipping between Tommy on TV winning the big pinball and
Yeah.
and a commercial
Trying to
for
escape it.
a detergent that is called High Powder, right?
Yeah.
And she's flipping back and forth. So, maybe the metaphor wasn't that veiled.
It's the same thing with the poppies, right? Where they're trying
Yeah.
to spell out what is going on without
Drugs
them
are
literally
bad.
doing the drugs on screen. Because I think if they were to, if you show drug use literally, it ends up giving you a higher rating at the end
It
of the
does,
day
yeah.
than
Yeah.
if you do creative stuff like this to try and be like, saying it
Go
without
around
saying it.
But then
And also in 75, I feel like maybe you might have been able to get away with even how dark this movie does get.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, well, technically is fine.
but
I
then
mean, this movie
Bubbles-
would be fine nowadays. We have a movie called Cocaine
That's
Bear
true.
in
We covered it 3
mainstream
weeks
media.
ago.
But it's
Yeah.
rated R.
That's true.
So Bubbles shoot her to the screen. Then
Yeah.
baked beans, because there was a whole sequence we kind of glossed over because it's not really that important.
It's like the commercials
yeah.
or whatever of like
for
showing
this
baked beans.
weird
That's
baked
actually
beans thing.
it's a very cool thing. The director, this is also a song that was added specifically for the movie because he was like, capitalism
very-
sucks.
yeah, it's
and
very
we're all
like a
addicted
jingle.
to everything. And it was actually costumes and like set pieces that was used for the Three Musketeers.
Oh.
And he had actually done like either he had done or something happened where he was like shooting a commercial for something and he thought it was absolute bullshit. And then he basically kind of took those same imagery pieces and made them full camp and kind of crazy and then brought them back in to be like, this is what you're watching instead of your son doing something good because you can't handle him doing something good because you know yourself, you know your family, you know what's happened, and you would rather turn it off or grab a bottle of champagne or do a bunch of blow or eat a bunch of baked beans than look at your son succeeding, which is like because trauma. It's crazy.
Yeah, because
Crazy.
then after the beans shoot out of the TV, a bunch of brown liquid shoots out of the TV, and she's like writhing in it, and it's very
gross.
The fiddle.
It's gross.
The fiddle scene is like
she crushes it though. She commits to the bit so hard.
Yeah.
The fiddle scene is outright disgusting because of the implications, but this is a close second because of there's no implication.
It's visually disgusting.
Yeah, it's visceral, it's vitriolic, it's fucking gross. It's just uneasy.
It's animalistic, right? It's like that kind of like addiction to both like luxury and like, drugs or booze or whatever. It's that like I need it. I will do whatever I have to. I will scratch my own eyes out. I will do anything.
It reminded
me
a lot.
To not feel and not know what's happening.
It reminded me a lot. I watched Triangle of Sadness recently. Did you watch?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Steve's seen it.
I love that movie. I think it's great.
Uncomfortably. Well, after talking to you, I hated it, and then after talking to you, you helped me work through.
It's hard. It's a rough movie.
It's a rough movie.
Sure.
There's a whole middle section where they serve bad seafood to these rich people. Spoiler alert, and they all start puking. But the puking scene goes on and on
visceral and long.
There's also there's also a storm happening, so the boat is rocking, and these people are shitting themselves and barfing everywhere.
Yeah, nice.
It's absolutely disgusting.
It should be gross.
The only way I could get through that moment in the movie was just realizing just enough that it's CGI, that I'm like, okay, it's just CGI. I can get through this. Yeah. If they had actual stuff in their mouth and were fake vomiting it up, I probably would have had a way more difficult time with it. Yeah.
I don't do
it's
that for
gross. It is
movies.
So gross, but it's also kind of weirdly satisfying because only the rich people eat it. No one else eats it. That
feels good.
Yeah. You have this kind of, and the one other person that was supposed to eat
unless they're vomiting
was the captain, because it's the captain's dinner, and he's like, I don't much care for this fancy food, so he just gets a hamburger and fries.
He has a hamburger
so he doesn't
fries,
eat it,
and he's a recluse. Is played by
Wait,
Woody
is this
Harrelson.
Just what's that movie with Rolf? It's his face. Came out on Disney. The Menu.
Right.
Is it just The Menu, but aggressive?
Same kind of humor. The Menu is a bit. The Menu is a better movie in my opinion. I liked it better.
The Menu is definitely a more approachable movie. It's a more easier to watch.
Yeah. It's more of a psychological horror kind of thing, almost like
and
an
still
Ari
camp,
Aster.
Very funny, very.
Oh, it's very funny.
It's so good.
The darkest of dark comedies. Yeah, but it has a lot of horror imagery and horror situations and Anya, what's her fucking name? Anya Taylor-Joy. Yeah. She's awesome in it. She plays she's
10 out of 10. Nicholas Holt. I love him.
Nicholas Holt is great in it.
I love him. He does great.
He's beast.
I mean, he sucks, but he does great.
He was the shitty older brother on Skins.
I think the whole.
He's also in that zombie movie. What was it called?
Oh
my God!
Warm Bodies.
Warm Bodies. He did so good. And Mad Max.
And Renfield. Witness me.
Yeah.
He's in Renfield, which I haven't seen yet, but Nicolas Cage is a campy vampire. Yeah, I'm into that shit.
Oh yeah, I want to watch that. But I also do love What We Do in the Shadows. So I'm is it the same? Do it. No. I'll probably still. I don't think it's. I just love What We Do in the Shadows.
Well, you know. Guillermo...
I don't think I have. Yeah, I haven't seen it either. So
you haven't seen
the trailer.
What We Do in the Shadows?
No. I'm talking about the Renfield.
Oh, okay.
I've seen What We Do in the Shadows many times. Yeah.
Are you caught up on the TV show though? Hey, did you see this one? Are you caught up
I'm not. I'm not fully caught up because I tend to binge things, but my partner likes to space things out.
Yeah.
But I have a forgetful brain, so then I forget we're watching something, and I'm like, no, we're behind. So we're behind a season.
For most shows, I wait for them to end. C is ending right now. The Jason.
Oh, I've heard C is great. I've seen clips of it, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I've just been waiting for it to end. But with What We Do in the Shadows, there's other shows that I wait for the season to end, and then I binge it. But there are shows that I do watch episode to episode when they come out. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I'm gonna watch the new episode, a ritual. It's Wednesday night.
You gotta do it. I did that with Bates Motel for a while.
Okay, right on. I didn't.
Forgive me, but let's get back on track.
Forgive me, Rails. Remember Rails?
Rails. So we've got.
Rails,
where did we leave off?
Well,
we just did all the imagery for the champagne stuff.
But we've also got during that same sequence, we're kind of going back and forth between the pinball tournament where we get to see the weirdest shit ever put to film, which is Elton John, who plays the literal pinball wizard, and he is for some reason the size of a 2-story house.
Yeah. Can I
And
say
I,
something
yeah,
very quickly just about the
course.
last scene? Because I think it's an interesting little fun fact about
Mhm.
shooting. The champagne scene took 3 days to film. Um, the husband of Ann-Margret, the actress, strongly objected to the scene where she slithers around in melted chocolate, and he was not happy about it. And then
She
during
almost
the
married
filming,
Elvis, I learned today.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
but it was not Elvis that said no, his other husband. But during the filming, she actually cut her hand on a piece of glass from broken TV, like severely lacerated her
Oh,
hand,
jeez.
rushed to the hospital, stitched it up, and was back the next day shooting the rest of the
Oh,
scene.
thank you for
He
reminding me.
committed to that. It was a lot.
The whole point of me talking about the foam and the beans is because when Frank comes back, what we see actually happened is she's tripping out on her own, and she threw the champagne bottle through the TV, and that's really
it.
all that happened. And
Yeah,
I
it's
love
all in
that.
her head.
I love that, and this movie does that a lot, where we
What
see
is
all these
reality?
crazy visuals, and then I honestly believe that in the Acid Queen sequence, she has sex with him, gives him some opioid or some crazy
drug to make him
and
feel things.
he passes it on the floor. But all the stuff
but
happens.
we get to see all the craziness, all of the behind the scenes of what the
Yeah.
brain is doing throughout that entire process. Yeah. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Sorry, we're moving on to Pinball Wizard.
Pinball wizard,
There has
pinball
to
wizard,
be a
wizard.
twist. Oh, nice.
So I'll tell a little.
That's a good version.
I'll tell a
You
little
got
story.
covered in piss. Down, down,
How do
down.
you
And
think
melted
he
chocolate.
pisses? I don't know. So I'll tell you guys a little thing that relates to my history of the movie. Recently, I heard the Elton John version. It just came on the radio, or I heard it on Spotify or something, and I was like, "Oh, cool, that's interesting." I didn't know Elton John covered this at one point. Now you guys are both laughing because the most iconic version is actually him doing it in this movie, and then there's also just the Who version of the song.
Yes.
Also, you know what I mean? So I couldn't believe it. I felt like such a part of my childhood was changed. A memory was like shifted into a new memory. So anyway, sorry, I just wanted to just relate that to what we were talking about earlier.
No, that's rad.
And honestly, the Elton John version of this song goes so fucking hard.
It's so hard.
It's so good.
You know how I was saying last night? I was like, I got a bit of my lore and my information a bit wrong, so I want to correct it. Last night I was like, oh, Elton John was like on set and like his band was there or whatever. Also, someone who has not seen what the Who looks like before. I've only heard them.
Pete Townsend's
right. And like also Tommy is the lead singer of the Brain. I did not know. But it's a little bit backwards. So Elton John came into the studio, the Who wasn't there. So the entire recorded soundtrack version and also what you hear in the movie is Elton John and his band. But in the movie itself, you see the Who as the band members.
Yeah, they're performing
like
in the background.
Guitars and doing their thing.
Keith Moon's playing the drums,
did.
and there's water coming off the drums, which I thought was cool.
And he was
Steve
just
hated.
smashing the set.
And then
he was also famous for that too.
Yeah.
He like would I think I said that earlier, but he would like blow
I
up
said,
his drum
who do
kits
you
and
think
stuff.
you are?
I
With
don't
those
know.
wet drums, who do you think you are?
Running round leaving scars.
Won't get fooled again. That's the Who, right? Or is that just Who?
Yeah.
There's just things that
Who are you?
visual
Guess
things
Who.
that make me uncomfortable, and that's one of them.
The boots?
The boots make me uncomfortable, but so do the wet drums. I don't like wet drums.
He actually also Elton John didn't want to take on this part and basically was over time talked into it. He's like, okay, I'll do it. But the only way I'm doing it is if I get to keep the giant Doc Martens.
Right.
And they said yes.
And now he
got
walks
to
around
keep
his
them.
mansion in them all the time. Like,
Probably. Why? Apparently they were very unsafe. He was like strapped in with like leather straps.
He lifts
thought
his
he was
foot
gonna
at
die.
one point, and I was like, is he going to fall over and break his neck? They remind me of those...
They had to pose him, basically.
Okay.
It's just don't move too much and it'll be a cool shot. I trust it.
They remind me of those boots from earlier this year, the red boots that are supposed to be... They're called like Mario boots. Remember those? Did you see those things? They're like
No.
For like cosplay?
no,
Or-
they're like their style. Their
I don't
fashion.
believe that.
Oh yeah, they look like so
Prove
stupid.
it. Prove it style. I don't know.
They look like
Um,
Mario's shoes. Like,
Interesting. Okay. Well, do what you gotta do. I love it.
but there's like boot versions and stuff, and like the
what
red
are they
ones.
called? They're called
Clown shoes.
Big Red. Look up MSCHF Big Red Boot Men's.
That's a lot of information.
Yeah, I'll just link you. I'll just link you the image in the chat.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Oh my God, soon we can do that.
Yeah.
Did you
Bless.
have you you don't remember this thing from literally 2 months ago? Whoa, what's my phone
No.
freaking?
I'm catching up on shows from like a decade ago. Like I'm behind the times.
There we go. It's in the chat.
Oh, it's on Etsy too. Nice.
Yeah, I think it was an Etsy thing to begin with. Who do you think you are? I don't know.
Oh yeah. I didn't know that was real. They also look like oh my God, what's his name? Oh my God, video game character.
Mega Man
Mega Man boots.
Yeah.
Thank you.
or
Yep.
Astro Boy. Yeah, they look stupid. I can't believe that people wear them. It's wild to
If you
me.
put a high enough price tag on something, everybody will think it's actually good. and
Some
they'll buy
doofus
it.
will buy it. Yeah, they do kind of. They are reminiscent of the Elton John shoes in this movie.
A little bit, yeah. But like
But,
more basic, less punk.
Yeah,
Less like that Doc Martin rock and rolly.
they also don't make you the size of a house. Like he was.
He was towering over everything.
He's so. I mean, that's another thing, right? You're like, how much of that is meant to be how Tommy is perceiving this imposing figure, right? Like
Oh, for sure.
he sees him as just like a giant monster man, but really he's just a regular sized guy.
Well, also if we're thinking about it in like through Tommy's gaze, Tommy is playing pinball.
I
We
mean,
just
did you
found out he was
see him
good
in
at
this
it.
movie? I'd be one of Tommy's gays for sure.
Oh my, yeah. Get me in there immediately. He's ripped and beautiful. Look at that hair. Oh my God. Stunning.
I believe
His eyes.
cum gutters. The term cum gutters was thrown
We,
around.
we did talk about this and we were like, oh, this lingo does continue for
I think that's
all
when
of
you
time.
called me old.
I did. It was that moment. I was like, I know what that word is. I know.
Also, just a quick side note: when we did Repo, it was definitely thundering and lightning, and it's
It's also
fully
storming tonight.
thundering and lightning. So I think it's 2 episodes in a row. Episode 99, 100, and weirdly enough, episode 99, 100, the only 2 episodes you've been on consecutively. So you did this. You're witchy
I
ways.
bring the thunder. I'm pulling a Florence
bring
and the
the
machine
thunder.
and calling the storm to me as we talk about some messed up stuff.
You control the weather machines that are also turning the friggin' frogs gay. So
It's true. I prayed to my crystals and did my whole thing, so we're good. What was I gonna say? We got Elton John doing weird things. Oh yes, so we're seeing it through Tommy's gaze. I got there, and it makes sense for us to see like Elton John elevated on a different pinball machine that's way up in the sky, because Tommy's just like, oh my God, I just realized I'm good at this and this kind of gives me joy in life and I've never been able to do this before. And then he sees someone who's just like, I will take you down. I am the king of this. You cannot beat me. And he's like, why can we just have fun and like play this fun game? I don't know, like I'm just living my life and I'm not trying to like throw you off your platform or whatever. And the guy is just like, yeah, just above the clouds on his high horse, can't take it. So wild.
Who do you think you are?
I don't know what makes him so good. So
supple
good.
risps.
Wrists.
Supple wrists.
Supple
And then
wrists.
this is about the time now where we have these 2 really visually intense sequences, and then we find out that Frank has found a specialist for Tommy. There's a doctor, we say.
A doctor.
Seems like a cash grab to me.
A cash grab. And this doctor concludes that Tommy is basically in a state triggered by emotional trauma, not
It's a
physical
mental
trauma.
block.
Yeah.
He's still reacting. Also very Clockwork Orange too, like seeing Tommy and like with like this thing over his eyeballs and like connected to all these wires. And he's like, yeah, no, his brain just says he can't do it, but he can. And I don't know how to get him out of that because he's not willing to see me or hear me or talk to me. So I guess he's got to do it himself or something.
Yes. And then he's got they've realized the mirror, I guess, is like important to his therapy. And he's got to just confront himself, his reflection.
He's like, go to the mirror, boy, because he always keeps like, that's the only way I think that also his parents have seen him interact with anything, is him constantly going to the mirror and looking at something, but they know he can't see. So why are you looking at it?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So they, try to use his actions to help him, I guess. And again, at this point in the stage version too, like his parents have tried to be neglectful, yes, ignorant, yes, but have been trying to help him this whole time.
It's also, I
so it
mean,
makes more
obviously,
sense to
the reason,
call a doctor.
Yeah, the reason they cast, I mean, I don't know if this is 100% true, but the reason they cast Jack Nicholson is for sure to get butts in seats. Because if you look at the trailer,
it's the same thing with Tina Turner and Elton John. And
yeah, but Elton John
else?
and Tina Turner are both musicians who are famous for, singing. Jack Nicholson, not so much. He's just some guy.
And he also, he really liked Russell's work. I think he was, do I have the quote here? Hold on.
Quote.
Jack Nicholson. No,
Jack Nicholson.
I do have the quote from Pete talking about how he didn't want him to be in the movie and he hated him. And then afterwards they were fine.
Pete Townsend hates Jack Nicholson?
He didn't want him in the movie. He was like, why are you bringing all these stars in who don't know rock and roll and don't care about it? And the director was like, yeah, do you need people in the seats? Exactly what you're saying, Stephen.
Yeah.
So
because he's only in the movie for less than 5 minutes.
They could only afford him one day on set.
That's all they but if you look at the trailer for this movie, which I watched this afternoon, he's in like 40,
so much of it.
He's in like 70% of the trailer is Jack Nicholson, and then you watch the movie and you're like, oh, he was only in the movie for 45 seconds.
Yeah. No. The whole thing with Jack Nicholson, I'm paraphrasing because I didn't write the quote down, but he was basically saying like he had seen Russell's work before, and he was like, I love what he does, and some of his stuff I love, and some of it I absolutely hate. And I just want to be in the room with him and see what makes him tick.
Right.
And that's why he was like, put me in, coach. I'll do it. But one day, that's all you can afford.
One day.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the Pete, the guitarist who also was the mastermind and unfortunately the inspiration for Tommy and all of his traumas, basically saw him in the recording studio, and he made him record his one song, one moment, over and over and over again because he hated it. And he was like, that's his quote is, he would look at someone and be like, he's a rock star, looks like a bloody accountant to me.
Oh shit.
And he was like, get him out of my space. He does not know rock and roll.
The crazy thing about that is that
they're friends now. I think it's fine.
Jack Nicholson's was kind of a rock star actor at the time, He was kind
but not musically. Musicians and actors in that time were like,
I know, I don't mean
we are different.
Musically, I mean in the acting sphere.
Oh yeah, A-list doing crazy things.
Exactly.
Like counterculture also as well, like with like The Shining and all this. Yeah, he's doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, so it's great. Yeah. It's great casting, and it makes sense based on what I said earlier about how he was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Now he's running the asylum. It's brilliant to put him in that role. I think it's...
And give him an accent for no reason.
Because everybody's British in this movie. I think it's hilarious that he was like, I'll do one day, though. That's it. I'm a big Hollywood actor.
He probably would have done more if they had more budget, because the budget for this movie was only $3 million.
It was $3 million, and the box office was $34.3 million.
Which is good, not great. They made their budget back like 10 times over. But if you think about something like Jaws, a movie that came out the same year.
Well, also like a niche movie, right? Like it's...
Exactly, yeah. So it did well for what it is, for sure.
Yeah. It's not bad.
But at the end of the day, I wonder how much of that was old Jackie boy.
Yeah. And Tina Turner and Elton John and Eric Clapton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Wild stuff.
So I just want to point out we are kind of coming up against time a little bit. So
God. Okay, we can.
But
move.
really, the next bit is a lot of long songs that kind of stay within the same context.
For sure. Its second act is Tommy awakening, being like, I'm free. His mom like smashes him through the mirror in like a rampage.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh my God, I understand. I'm back. I'm in myself, which is beautiful imagery and correlation to that. But it's basically him becoming like this preacher guy for the rest of the film, of like having masses of people following him and being like, how do you do it? You were just nothing. You were treated like crap. And then now you have sight. You can see again. You can like, what did you do? How do I get awakened like you did? Which is the whole Messiah kind of thing too of the 70s, of everybody was trying to latch on to something to save them after the war, to be like, what can give me hope right now, because I'm lost. I'm so lost.
And then the subplot with Frank, the stepdad, is he's moved beyond just being rich. He's like world domination.
The mansion.
He shows the map. He shows all the places where Tommy's a huge star. We see sort of the juxtaposition between his loyal fans, which are like an army, and his actual army of like security who are wearing like army outfits.
It's the cult leader vibe too, right?
You have the cult leader stuff happening with, and he's sort of like, I feel at this point Tommy doesn't even really realize he's so new. He was kind of like reborn into the world when he was able to get his sight back. He was
born at like 20 years old when he was born.
So he's sort of like loving it and not realizing that through all of this, he's becoming that Marilyn Manson. I keep fucking doing that. The Marilyn Monroe false idol figure that he couldn't see when he was exposed to it. Only his mom and the people around him could see it. He didn't see any of that because he didn't know they were trying to save him on a religious level.
But did he? Did he know? And be like, do I get people into my house and follow me and save them because I did? I think
he was being more altruistic, though. I think he honestly wanted to help people at this point. But from
it all comes
the audience's
from good
point of view, we're seeing that he's now just in that role, not realizing he's in that role. And then
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when he tries to enforce his will, that's when his fan base starts to turn. When he's like, you shouldn't drink of the drink and smoke of the herb, or you should put on your blinders and play pinball like how I became who I am. And that's when they're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, this is broken. I feel like this also calls back to, Stephen, what you were talking about, of like having what's the reality of what we see as the audience, which seems to be through Tommy's eyes versus what is actually happening. So is it that Tommy actually did see church as the like Marilyn Monroe fallen icon enlightenment space, but his parents were probably actually just taking him to the church?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like he does know. But again, I feel like it's falling into the trap and having history repeat itself, right? It's like, oh, but I actually do know. I have been enlightened. I do know a lot of things, and I can help you. And I know this got a lot of people into one space, and I can maybe help you and teach you and be your messiah, sure, if that's what you want to call me. But I'm here to do a good thing, and then realizing that it's still bad. Also, you were talking about too with the sorry, Jason, you were talking about the like putting on the blinders and like the cork in the mouth and whatever. That's also not what happens in the stage play.
Yeah, I was curious
Completely
about
different.
how this whole, because at one point last night Steve asked how they pulled off the, like, when he's in the junkyard, even was he just like going around like acting against like cardboard? Like, how did they do this whole the big silver balls with the handles on them and all the Messiah stuff?
Yeah.
What did that look like in the stage play?
In the stage play, we still got the Messiah energy. It was still kind of like Tommy to the masses. We still have the Sally Simpson moment, which if we have time to talk about tonight, I have a whole note about it that is something that should be touched on, especially in the culture.
At 2 hours, I just like to say,
No, I love the time check.
Think about where we're at.
Um, but in the stage play, it is actually what I was telling you guys, which is also why I was kind of confusing myself when we were finishing the movie. I was like, no, Tommy says, don't follow me. Why do I think that he says, don't follow me? But in the movie version, he's like, oh no, become me, and then you'll be enlightened. And they revolt. Those fans revolt. Stage version, he goes through the whole Sally Simpson thing where she is injured at a concert. She still follows him. He like brings her up on stage and is like, oh my God, I'm going to help you as best as I can. And Sally asks him in a public interview, she says, how can I be more like you and less like myself? And Tommy tells the entire crowd and her to not emulate him and to live their normal lives and find their own truth. But the crowd also still revolts because they wanted like a bolder answer. They wanted someone to guide them and tell them what to do because they can't figure it out. So they revolt and riot, but it's different from the movie. You have like the Mrs. Walker, Nora, and Frank, they like die in like a riot of violence. That doesn't happen in the stage play. They live, and basically Tommy retreats just like Pete did from the Who when he left the Who to go do his own thing and kind of process things. He was like, I you can be mad at me, I guess. I don't really know what to tell you, but I gotta go deal with my own thing. And he goes back to his family and kind of reconnects with them and forgives them after everything, which is that the right decision? For me, probably not. But like for other people, maybe. And just be like, yeah, you suck. But like, I guess we did it.
Yeah.
And now you're all I have, and also my fans don't know me either. So
you were also saying there was a part that I kind of misinterpreted that you made a good point about, where he's inviting people to come to his home, but it's giving, you can come over and you can be here for like a minute, but like once I'm gonna get over it real quick.
It was the false love of like the 60s and 70s of like peace and love and we love each other and everybody's best friends, but it's like, sure, you can come hang out, and then I'm tired of you. Move along, please. This is performative. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's false. That false god or false icon, right?
And he has that dinner, and then Frank is trying to like have as many people come through the house as possible, which
and make money.
He kind of turns his. It's kind of like Dollyland or what's Elvis's Graceland. It's kind of giving Graceland vibes where you can.
It was giving me like what is it? What's that called? That everybody died in the gunfire.
Waco, Texas.
Waco,
or
Texas.
Heaven's Gate.
Kind of that vibe.
Yeah.
In the movie version, in the stage play, very much not. It is like Tommy being very genuine and being like, I want you to come here, and then being overwhelmed and not being able to handle it. Whereas in the movie, it feels much more culty and purposeful to be like, no, let me teach you how to do things. Does that make sense?
It does. It does, absolutely. Also, I just saw a full-on lightning bolt.
Oh, yeah, they've been outside the whole time. It's beautiful. But,
yeah, that...
But yeah, very like different core beliefs between both the album and the stage version and the movie, which is crazy to have the core themes be so different, but the music is the same and the characters are similar enough for the most part.
I'm kind of glad you told me that, because when I do eventually see a live stage version of Tommy in some capacity, like if we didn't have this conversation, I'd be so confused. I'd be like, none of this happened.
For sure.
Everything you've described to me is like it's a different movie.
It's completely different themes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that they like took that route.
But again, like this is Pete's baby, right? Like he was also he didn't realize his own abuse history until he was an adult. It was very much similar to Tommy, like it was kind of repressed memories that he found while he was kind of building it. So it makes sense why the story over time has evolved and changed as he himself kind of figures out more things.
Well, I've always kind of seen trauma as like a cause and effect, but it all sort of it's like a knot, and you kind of have to like
you have to untangle it like one piece at a time. Yeah.
That's why I think like therapy is super important in a lot of ways, because it's talking to a third party. Somebody
you guys hear that thunder? Sorry, did it hit you at the same time? Okay, that was rad.
It's closer to you guys because you guys reacted, and it wasn't I think I saw the lightning bolt, and then the thunder was over by. Anyway,
Cool. Very
trippy,
cool. Weather's
trippy.
Trippy.
It's a pinball wizard.
The pinball wizard.
Has to be a twist.
So the themes of the movie specifically are him very much unraveling his trauma like a knot, like a bunch of wires or rope tied together, but he has all these like third party things happening to him that while his stepdad is trying to thrust him into these situations, they're supposed to do it for him. They're not. They're keeping him in sedation almost. They're keeping him in that vegetative state. And then when he finally like is able to step outside of it, when all the traumas are complete, and he's able to compartmentalize them individually and then come together and then find pinball, I guess that's the like it
And become good at something and have people be like, wow, you're not just the worst and whatever. I also think like I don't want to put words into like Pete's mouth on this because I have not heard him talk specifically about this, but the entire idea of having older Tommy talk to younger Tommy and then vice versa, it gives, whether he knows this throughout his own therapy or whatever, I don't know, it's that kind of self-parenting that you do in therapy. I don't know if you guys have been to therapy. I have. It helps.
It does.
And like kind of reparenting yourself through the trauma. It's like if
I wouldn't say
visualize
therapy is
myself
important
now, if I could go
hadn't...
back in time and talk to my younger self and talk her through things, it's very much that vibe of like, oh, I've been there. I've been through everything you've been through. I am thriving. I'm awakened. I have a following. I can do all these things. You'll get there. And I'm so sorry it's happening to you right now. It's very much that like, self-parenting thing. Which is cool if he didn't know that he was already dealing with the trauma and his brain kind of just went there musically anyway.
I haven't done that exercise specifically, but I've done a lot of work on like building boundaries.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
boundaries are good.
Tommy has no way of building boundaries if he can't.
He can't communicate. And even if he tried to, people probably wouldn't understand him anyway.
But the ironic part is because he never learned that, he doesn't build boundaries with people after he's out of his deaf, dumb, and blind state, and he lets all these people in because he thinks that they're genuine people, but they're all leeches. All the people that are following him are leeches. He didn't experience any of what we're seeing him experience in the way that we're witnessing him experience it, if that makes sense.
It totally does make sense because he is newly born
like
into
you
the
said,
world
like
at that
he's
point.
Born at 20.
It's like he's just been kind of in the womb for 20 years and like having your brain kind of turn on and have all these crazy things happening and seeing things in a different light. When you're brought into this world, you're not brought into hating people or thinking people are bad inherently. You're like, oh, my friends, I can teach you something. Okay, cool, let's go. But he was a fully grown adult at that point. So he had to deal with everything at like train hitting a wall speed instead of kids growing up and being like, oh, things can be bad and things can be whatever. It's just the beautiful naiveness that just continues to hurt him. Mm-hmm. That's very sad.
So we get the song with him and his mom where she kind of snaps out of her.
The mirror. So good.
And then, we like him just running free and running through, we're
almost drowned in that scene, by the way.
Oh, and the actual part where he's like actually on a beach.
No, not the beach scene.
Or
also,
when he's
very,
literally
very
running
Catholic
on a
Christian
wave.
too, where he's like kind of rebaptizing his mom. No, when he like falls out of the mirror, he like falls into the like big mansion pool, and they were shooting it, and they were like, "Wow, he looks so cool," and he's like doing the thing, and he's reaching up, and they were like, "Oh, he's drowning! Get him out of there!" Yeah. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, so I guess the last little bit that we have to talk about is when it just cuts to like the little girl who idolizes him.
Sally Simpson.
Sally Simpson idolizes him, and she sneaks out and she goes to get to see him perform live, and then she's immediately like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yep, she's confused. She's like, "I don't know. Everybody's into it, but I'm not. But I still love him though." Like, also Sally is like she sees him as this god, like similar to how people saw the Who, right? Like you would see like Roger or Pete or whoever, you would have the Beatlemania kind of effect, right? People just go insane. And she was like, "Oh, I don't really know what's going on because this wasn't what I was expecting. Sure, but I still love him." And she rushes the crowd to be at the front, but she's tiny, so she gets
She gets
hurt.
trampled, and you said that's based on a true thing that happened to a
And I would
fan.
like to also correct myself because I did not realize my history on this year wise. This is actually, unfortunately, a really unsettling foreshadowing of what would happen.
Okay.
So, this movie came out, the whole Sally Simpson episode happens where this kid sneaks out. She's like, I want to be rebellious, do my thing. I love this thing. Gets really hurt. It becomes a whole, also in the stage play, too, they make it much more of a thing, like media is involved and like they're like, oh, are you okay, and Tommy took care of you after you got hurt, whatever. 4 years after this movie came out is when the Cincinnati incident happened. Let me just look at my notes really quick so I don't misspeak. um yeah, so it was a Cincinnati concert. It happened 4 years after the movie's release in 1979. There was a rush of fans at their concert in Cincinnati that basically they were kind of like promised tickets at a certain point, and then they like heard the Who warming up inside, and they thought maybe the band was on stage earlier than they had planned, but they only had like two doors to get into this venue.
Mm-hmm.
11 people died by asphyxiation, by being just trampled and crushed
Pushed up
trying to get
against.
through these two
Yeah.
doors. Similar, this also happened like this past New Year's too, when was it China or Japan? I can't remember. Where people were allowed back out into the streets. There was like
Yeah.
this huge party in like an alley, and people were trying to get through, and a bunch of people were just trampled to death
My
and
dad's
died.
told me stories about even when he would go to concerts as a teenager, where
Yeah.
that would happen. There'd be like two doors, like here and here, like two doors that open, so four
No
doors
crowd
total.
control, no
No
nothing,
crowd control.
just
The doors would just
go.
open, and then the thousands of people outside would
Would
all try
rush.
to rush the door. So he actually witnessed people go through a plate
Terrifying.
glass window before, because
Oh, for
people
sure.
would just get pushed up against and then gets pushed through.
It's so crazy.
It's
Yeah.
insane. It's absolutely insane. And
For
like there,
for like
but
Def
also think
Leppard or
about
like Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath or like Van Halen, those were the
yeah.
kinds of bands that came out after the Who that would that shit would happen with still.
Yep.
It's
It's
wild.
also like
Think
the
about.
the age range of the deaths of the 11 people were 15, most like 15 to like 20, 21, 22, and then one 27-year old.
Hmm.
And it
Yeesh.
also kind of makes sense a little bit too. Like kids have this idea of like feeling like they're invincible in a way. Like I think as kids we all kind of thought, oh, we can do whatever and kind of live. And then a bunch of people died. 26 other people reported injuries, and they actually didn't go back to Cincinnati to perform until 40 years later, because it was just such a whole thing. Like Cincinnati made bills and bans on like general admission to concerts because they were like, we need to have assigned seating. We need to make sure this never happens again. A bunch of kids died
Wow.
because mania. And the Who, oh, this is another thing too. The Who didn't know what happened until after they finished their show. So it
Jeez.
happened as they were like the whole entrance thing happened. A bunch of people died. The crowd still managed to get in, and the cops were like taking bodies out of like kind of the doorway in the street, and they didn't want to tell the Who before they went on or during their show because they thought it would actually make it worse, which is horrible, but like it probably would have. At that point, if people are crazy enough to like trample over each other and then you cancel a show halfway through, it would have been madness.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
then the band also couldn't be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened. Am I responsible? Am I not? It's, yeah. But Sally Simpson, anyway, 4 years earlier for the movie, very unsettling foreshadowing.
That's
So,
great. Like that's
yeah. And it's sad.
moment of silence for them.
Yeah, it sucks.
Well, I guess not to end it on a downer, but basically, what's the final song that Tommy sings, and then he walks up to the
See me, feel me,
Right.
and it's also looking at you,
Listening to you.
I feel the music. Yeah, I think it's looking at you.
and I
It's
feel like it had element of all the songs in the movie? Because I remember hearing a bit of Pinball Wizard in it at one point as well, like musical themes as well.
For sure. It's like it's concept album, right? So like a lot of the themes kind of bleed into each other.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual theme, also you were saying before if there were like singles of this album, Pinball Wizard was one, See Me, Feel Me was also one. Like those were kind of the big numbers that people knew. It's the tie-in to the end of the film, right? Like you're like, oh, we've all experienced this together. We can all kind of go back a little bit and reflect on what we all just did as a team, as viewer and artist alike.
And we get
it's beautiful.
And after that big number, I think he more so just realizes that not everything is, really the way that he was presented it, but instead he has to make a new future. So we literally get the same visual that started the movie, but the sun's rising. So basically you feel hopeful.
He goes
for
through
Tommy.
the waterfall where he was conceived at the beginning and like bathes in it, and then sees the sun like in the exact same position at the beginning. Was it setting?
It was rising.
Instead of rising? It was rising, and in the beginning it was setting?
Rises at the end, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Or do I have it flipped? Because the way I thought
I think you're right.
I think it was rising because it's supposed to
symbolize that. New life.
Yeah, like he gets to have a life outside of this like ridiculous rock star life that I feel like he's putting behind him.
And also in the movie too, like having his parents die, he's now alone, which is again different from the stage where he reconnects. He also reconnects too on stage with his both of his younger selves.
Okay.
Where there's like a moment in the middle of See Me, Feel Me where they call out to each other, and it looks for a moment that Tommy is like reverting to his old self, but then you have this like very fourth wall breaking moment where all of his past selves come out. They like hold hands. You have the rest of the cast come out, and they just sing this song at the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's powerful, and people usually just bawl their eyes out. Mm-hmm. It's like it hits you in a really deep way. Yeah, it's a lot. This music is great.
Yeah, I think with that, are you guys ready to talk about your final thoughts on the movie?
Yeah.
Ready to do
could do it.
You ready to do a little bit of your? You ready to do? Where the fuck is it? Why is this so stupid?
You had this so queued up, Jason. So queued up.
I'm so cued. It's supposed to be like right here. It's supposed to be shared with me, right? Shared.
It is. You've played it before.
I've played it before.
I've heard it before, and I've only been here 3 times.
Here it is. It's literally the first. Oh my god.
It's time for our final thoughts.
That one's great. What's the one we can't use anymore? The
Home Alone.
The Home Alone one. Is that one of my theories?
No, it's called
the Home Alone of It All. Oh, I won't play the song. I would say the Home Alone of It All it's a musical, so it just gets right the fuck to it.
It's a roller coaster. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, I think that it opens and they slap the fucking blueprint right down on the table, and we just get the fuck to it. But as far as our final thoughts go, why don't we do the same thing as we did before, Cass? Why don't you hit us with your final thoughts? And if you have any additional trivia or stuff that you wrote down that you want to talk about briefly, have at her. Give her hell, buddy, as I like to say.
I love that. I actually really only have one more note, and we probably could have done it in the outro, which is also cool, but it's more of the who trivia more than anything in itself. Very quickly, obviously we all know Woodstock happened, and that was a whole concert. They the night before they were supposed to perform, they were really pissed because somebody laced their food with LSD. And so they were tripping for 14 hours before they went on stage. And again, like a band that like Pete is very much like, I don't believe in drugs. I believe in, oh my God, I didn't even tell you that he like made Tommy because of this like Indian like guru guy. What was his name? Mahir Baba. He was like an Indian spiritual master, and Pete like kind of fell in love with his work, and that's why we actually have Tommy as a album. Side note. So anyway, drugs happened. They were like, yeah, we have to do the show. They started at 3 a.m. in the morning, and they did like an hour and a half to like a 2 hour show in Woodstock.
Jeez.
And they finished. It was insane, absolutely insane. And also they were exhausted because they were just tripping for a bunch of time.
Yeah.
And they finished a bunch of Tommy songs and their other hits. And their final kind of moments were doing the see me, feel me, touch me, heal me, beautiful song. As the whole instrumental was happening on stage and the crowd was going crazy, the moment that Roger opened his mouth to start singing the lyrics, the sun started to rise. And like you can see, if you there's videos online, you can watch it. The sound quality isn't great. Sound is better on Spotify. But you can actually see the light, like this almost like golden hour glow washing over the stage, like they've summoned it. It's so incredible. And at that point, they were so over Tommy. They were like, I don't want to do this song anymore, and I don't want to do it. And then that happened at Woodstock, and they were like, okay, I guess this is important. So anyway, that's my little last fun tidbit.
Yeah,
Go look that video up. It is
Wild.
It's like it's witchcraft. It's magic. But yeah, final thoughts of this movie. It makes me feel like I just want to go to a museum on a bunch of psychedelics. I just want to see things in a really cool way. Also, trauma will continue as much as we try to stop it from happening, but we also still have to learn from each other. So, sucks. Yeah, I don't know. I rate this movie a definite watch for people. You might absolutely hate it. You could also love it and hate it at the same time. But it's a beautiful piece of history that I don't think we should forget anytime soon. So that's my final thoughts.
Awesome. Sorry, what was your rating?
I don't know. I'm gonna give it like that's really hard. As a piece, I want to say like a 4 out of 5. But as a cultural piece, I want to give it like a 10 out of 5. I don't know what that translates to.
Do you have like a nonsensical even rating?
A tab of acid and throw me into a pool. That's my rating. And see if I don't drown.
That's perfect. That's tab of acid and thrown into a pool is great. Steve,
Hi.
Why don't you hit us with your final thoughts? You've been a little quiet for a while. I hope you're feeling okay.
Well, I mean, you guys just have a lot more to say about this movie than I do.
Also, sorry, I didn't mean to take over. If you
No, it's fine. You have far more valuable things to say about Tommy than I do. I can tell you about the impact it had on me more than I can about anything else. I think that the movie visually is amazing. The music obviously is great. The performances are really good. I cannot say, however, that I went through the entire movie loving the whole thing, because it made me feel very uncomfortable and gross at times, which is an accomplishment of art. It's meant to make you feel stuff and think things, and it did. So for its job, it did a good one. But it's a very abrasive experience. And, I did not dislike it in any way, but I did find it very difficult to get through at times based on the experience overall. Overall good, though. It's a good experience, and I do recommend people watch it. I just don't think that I'll be able to revisit it all that much because of how intense it is and how the themes are so hard to comprehend and hard to deal with. The visuals are in your eyes, like they just like stabbed you in the eyes with syringes full of heroin. But yeah, like that stuff, this stuff, the sunrise at the beginning, there are these really, really beautiful shots throughout. And I love the use of color. I love the costume designs, and I love all of the cameos throughout. I am interested to know what it would have looked like if David Bowie was the Acid Queen. Also, the name The Acid Queen is an amazing name. Love it.
Like that's my new D&D character.
The
Maybe
Acid
that's my
Queen, yeah.
abyssal character is the Acid Queen.
Sure, yeah, it sounds like a good idea to me. And you put people inside of an Iron Maiden full
I
of
wish
I
I
was
named
thinking
mine-
about
syringes.
like a poison character anyway, like a femme fatale poison. So maybe the
I
Acid
wish I named my
Queen's it.
female tiefling druid in Baldur's Gate 3. I wish I
The
would have
Acid
named
Queen.
her the Acid Queen now, but her name's Spider
Or so.
Heroine. And I
That also
do form
works.
of spider constantly.
As for my rating, yeah, I give it 3 separate traumas out of 5. All color coded.
Just 3 color-coded traumas out of 5. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, it's accurate to the plot. 3
Mhm.
specific traumas.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. There's not a whole lot that I can add to that you guys didn't cover. I feel the same way about Steve in a lot of ways. I think it might have resonated with me a bit more, and I think it's I'm in a situation similar to when I watched Big Trouble in Little China last year, where I was like, I should have fucking seen this movie when I was 10 years old. God damn it. This movie, the first thing I wrote was I too old for this movie to change my life? Probably. But if I had seen this when I was 16, when I thought I was listening to the soundtrack, it might have actually altered some things about the way that I perceive rock operas and stuff. And also
Why
just
do you think I am the way I am? It's because I went through Repo and Tommy in the same 14 years old year.
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like if you're 14 and you're listening to this, first of all, leave. But if you stick around, go watch Tommy and just get a little bit messed up on how there's a lot of realities in this movie that you're faced with, and this movie translates. I'm sure it was very poignant in 1975, and it's still very poignant in 2023. I give this movie a 4 out of 5. This is something I will go back and listen to specifically. I'll listen to the soundtrack. I didn't get a chance to listen to the cast recording songs that you sent me, but only because of my own weird aversion to spoilers. And I know it sounds dumb because I've seen the movie, but I need to listen to it in order all the way through.
Yeah,
For the
it
first
has
time
a different
anyway.
vibe for sure. Like it's
Yeah.
very much more like stage piece. I will say, sorry, my cat is scratching my shirt like a crazy person. The Acid Queen song, oh my God, it's so good on the recording. And also we get a song that we don't have in the movie called, I believe, My Own Eyes. And it's this whole thing of like, again, Mr. Walker not being dead and the Walkers being together. And them kind of resigning themselves to being like, I want to take my own life back, and maybe we put him in an institution. I don't know what to do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's a musical theater song, like a rock musical theater song that you wouldn't probably think the Who would ever play, but it's a very good addition to the stage version, and it's worth a listen.
Awesome. So. I do collect vinyl, so like there's a record store around the corner from my work that I discovered that has a lot of like pretty pop stuff and pretty eclectic stuff, and I'm gonna go check out their Who section because I really want Tommy on vinyl now. And other than that, like visually, there's so many visuals in this movie that go from like that opening bit where it goes from like pretty grounded like set changes, like very theater set change style from him, and then he changes in from his like lounge wear and his like having a date with his wife to like going to war. And then when you see those gas masks and then her getting into the cage, that's when I was like, oh, I see what's gonna happen here. We're gonna see a lot of real grounded stuff, but then a lot of trippy like what the fuck do they, you have to interpret it, right? I think as a rating, like I said, 4 to 5, but I think I give this going to see this movie in theaters with your mom when you're way too young, and it setting the course of the rest of your life, and then you become your own dad, which I very much kind of have.
Trauma. Generational
trauma that you have to sort of unravel. A lot of our parents think that therapy is unheard of, but I think all of our parents could have. My rating for this movie is all of our parents need therapy.
We all maybe could have been like one step ahead if we all were doing the work together.
Exactly. So with that, I think that's the end of the show. I forgot to hit record, but whatever.
Whoops.
Whoops a doodle. It's funny that episode 100, it all came to a head here, and this was the one where I was like,
Oops.
I do forget.
I love that.
I do forget frequently. It will live forever on Twitch and YouTube, though, so that's good. Cass, once again, please come back all the time, constantly. Become the third member of our show. What did I say that out loud?
I live for the nerdy little fun tidbits. I can't help myself.
And that's why
I feel like I grew up on watching like the director's commentary, like behind the scenes for all the movies, and I was like, I need to know how you did that.
Yeah.
Insane.
You're a welcome addition to the Rogues Gallery of Hey Did You See This One? And here's to another 100 episodes. Cass, once again, thank you. You're good for the ages. And,
beautiful.
I guess at this point of the show, I got to do the thing. Do you want to kill for the them, I'm me? Do you want to kill that? Do you want to just kill it right here, right now? Do you want to just shoot it in the head? I know you hate it.
I mean,
I've always
Fill
thought
it with some acid.
I came up with it. I thought it was goofy. It's for Steven and Jason. For Steven and Cass. That whole thing.
This thing.
I'm killing it. It's dead. Going forward.
but how will we know the show's over?
Because you
But
say,
like, love you guys, bye.
yeah,
Yeah.
love you guys. Bye. And this week, I just have to ask everybody the question they ask themselves each and every week, and that is, of course, Cass. Do you want to hit us with the name of the show?
No. Hey, did you see this one?
Perfect.
I almost said the other title, and I was like, okay, acting Spoiler Goblin, also very good.
Spoily and the Goblin.
Oh.
Welcome back.
Also, I will say, after watching this movie last night, and then watching a bunch of the Who just crush it. Oh my God! Watch them at Woodstock. It is insanity.